Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming all of you guys. Welcome to Watang Yu. Nice to see all of you guys here. This is the first day of our course called Harmony and Relationships. This is where you're going to learn about how to put together the teachings of the Buddha within your own mind and training your mind, but also how to have harmonious relationships with all the people around you. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have any disgruntled or hostile or bitterness in your mind. You won't have relationships that are like that. You won't have animosity and resentment in your relationships. You would have sorted all that out within your own mind, and now in your relationships, you would be conducting those with ease, whether they're personal or professional relationships. That's probably not the case right now. You're probably having certain challenges in some of your relationships, and that's normal. But when you train your mind and you understand these teachings more and more, you can get to a point where all your relationships are harmonious. It's just that you need to cultivate the wisdom of how to do that. So that's what I'm going to be doing over the next 5 days, is helping you guys to understand the teachings that you need to be able to create harmonious relationships. Here in the morning, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just introducing you to the course so that you understand what it is I'm going to be teaching you throughout the 5 days. Then we're going to do some meditation together. Then we're going to teach you the Eightfold Path. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha, and anything that you're doing with the teachings of the Buddha, you would need to know the Eightfold Path, inside and out, backwards and forwards, left, right, up, down. This is the path to enlightenment, because in order to create harmonious relationships, you need to start within your own mind. Nothing about this path is about changing other people and getting other people to do things your way. It's about training your mind to be peaceful and joyful and how to relate to other people, even though they are doing things differently than you. So in terms of creating harmonious relationships, that starts within your own mind and training your own mind. This course isn't about changing other people and trying to get other people to do things your way. It's actually about training your own mind and cultivating wisdom within your own mind. So I'm going to be helping you to understand the Eightfold Path this morning. Then after we take our lunch, we'll come back and I'm going to teach you the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots, or the 3 fires. This is going to help you to understand what's really causing the difficulties in your relationships, and it's going to give you the solutions of how to fix it as well. So what we're going to be doing in this particular course is we're going to be meeting from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And as we're meeting together, we'll be starting each morning with some meditation. You guys will see how we do that. Then we'll have a morning talk. We'll have some break in the morning. Then we're going to have a lunch. Then we're going to come back, do some more meditation, and then we'll have a talk in the afternoon as well. So this Harmony and Relationships course, this is the contact information for me if you'd like to contact me for any reason. This isn't necessarily for this week, because if you're coming to the class, great, you'll be here, you'll learn. I'll be able to teach you whatever it is that you would like to learn while you're here. But this is more for after the course, that if you'd like to contact me for any reason, oftentimes students are going to need continuous guidance beyond the course. So if you're coming to the class, great. If you're not going to be here, you don't have to send me a message and let me know, because if you're here, I'll teach you, and if you're not here, that's okay too. So it's really up to you to decide what parts of the course you would like to attend. But this is information that you can contact me after the course. And then in terms of the way that we structure our each day, this is what I was just sharing, is that we're going to start with chanting and meditation each morning at 9 a.m. Then by 9:30, I'm going to be sharing the teachings, helping you guys to understand the teachings of the Buddha to be able to get closer and closer to having harmonious relationships. We're going to take a mid-morning break in there somewhere, probably around 10:30, 11. Then when we come back, we'll have some more discussion. Then we'll have lunch from 12 to 1:30. And these are kind of rough timings, right? Sometimes we might go to lunch a little bit earlier. Sometimes we might go to lunch a little bit later. It's not fixed and fast. So these are just kind of like a basic structure. Each time when we go to lunch, though, I will let you know when we're going to come back, because sometimes we might come back at 1:30, sometimes it might be 1:45, but this is generally kind of our structure, that in the afternoon, we're going to have some more meditation, and we're going to have some teachings in the afternoon as well. Okay, the course that I'm teaching you guys, it's based on this first book of the book series. It's titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. About half of the course is based on these particular chapters, 4, 5, 8, 11, 13, 14, and 15. But there's a whole nother half of the course that I've actually never written about. And the reason why is because the topics that I'm going to teach you on the other half of the course, it's easier to teach it to you in a live class than it is to write about it. It's not possible to really easily write about these particular topics that I'm going to teach you that second half of the course. So you'll see that these are chapters that I'm going to be discussing in the first half, and you can get this book for free by downloading it from our website, by taking it and go printing it, by getting printed versions here, just by reimbursing us for our printing cost, or if you have access to Amazon, you can get the book that way through access to Amazon. And you can get it in all these different formats, either PDF, Kindle, or print version. And it's part of this overall book series. It's the first book of the entire book series. So if you're coming to classes and you're reading the book of these chapters, this will really help you. And you'll see that each individual talk that I give, I let you know what chapter it is that I'm actually going to be teaching you. So you'd be able to actually read that either before class or after class to be able to help you. Because there's certain things in the book that aren't in the class. And there's certain things in the classes that aren't in the book. So the combination of the two is actually going to help you to be more fully informed about what it is that I'm sharing with you and what I'm teaching you. So these are the topics that I'm going to be sharing with you. As I mentioned today, I'm going to be teaching you the Eightfold Path. This is the path to enlightenment. I'm going to be using the original words of the Buddha, walking you through this step by step so you can understand this important teaching. After lunch, I'm going to be teaching you the 3 poisons, the craving, anger, and ignorance, so you can understand what's really causing the difficulties in your relationships and why it is that you're having challenges. Oftentimes we think it's the other people that are making our relationships difficult, but it's actually what's going on in your own mind. That doesn't mean that the other people aren't doing things that are unwise, because they surely could be, but you're not going to be able to have harmonious relationships by fixing other people. So you're going to need to know what's going on within your own mind, transforming your own mind, and that's what's going to bring about harmonious relationships for you. Then I'm going to teach you tomorrow what's called identifying your cravings, cultivating non-craving and analysis of the mind. For some of you guys, you were in the group learning program yesterday. I just taught this as part of that particular group learning program, but I'm going to teach it here because it's an important part of the Harmonious in Relationships course. Then I'm going to teach you these healthy mental states of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. This is where the Buddha actually gets the reputation of almost being like a doctor, because there's certain symptoms that you're going to see in your mind that you're having certain challenges, and there's certain remedies or prescription that you can apply in order to be able to remedy those things. And while the Buddha has that reputation of being a doctor, you're actually your own best doctor. If you can understand these particular solutions to the symptoms that you're having in your mind, you'll be able to employ these at any given time. So these 4 healthy mental states are something that's going to transform your mind away from disgruntledness and indifference and anger and frustration and jealousy and overactive mind. These are all things that are causing difficulties in your relationships. So when you can implement these 4 healthy mental states, it's going to antidote or provide a prescription to certain challenges that you're having within your own mind, and this will help you to have better and better relationships. So I'm going to be teaching you guys those, what the symptoms are and what the solutions are, so you can essentially create a tool belt for yourself that in day-to-day life, wherever you see these symptoms coming up, you can then apply the prescription to be able to fix what's going on within your own mind. Then the real focal point of this course is this talk on true love, love without attachment. I'm going to be talking to you about this on Wednesday morning. This is what you need to be able to learn in order to get to harmonious relationships. Right now, you're probably thinking about love in a certain way, and that understanding that you currently have of love may or may not actually be what we're describing as true love. You need to be able to get to what's called unconditional love. If you're falling in love with people and you're falling out of love with people, you haven't understood what true love is yet. And because you're not practicing true love, you're not going to be able to experience it in your day-to-day life. So I'm going to help you to understand the wisdom behind what is true love so that you can practice it more and more and more with the people around you. And as you're practicing true love with others, then you'll see that more and more love will be coming back to you. But as long as you don't understand what true love is and you're not practicing it, you're not going to be able to experience true love. So if you're noticing that you're falling in love and out of love with people, this isn't actually love. And you'll understand this when we get to it on Wednesday. Then I'm going to teach you about how to practice these teachings in a world of the unknowing, relationships with non-practitioners, because It's great that you're coming to the temple. It's great that you're meditating. It's great that you're learning these teachings, and you're going to be getting more and more peaceful and more joyful. But perhaps the people around you are not. Maybe in your business environment, your professional career, or maybe in your home life. Maybe you have a life partner, or maybe your parents or your siblings aren't practicing these teachings, and you might really struggle in those situations. So I'm going to help you to understand how to navigate this where you're in a world of people who aren't actually practicing these teachings. Then I'm going to teach you how to practice non-attachment, how to eliminate attachment to those people who are closest to you, so that you can actually have relationships, but not actually be attached, meaning forming your inner feelings based on this relationship. Right now, if you have people in your life where when they say something to you, you get angry at them, or when they're away from you, you feel like you miss them, or you feel lonely or bored when you're away from them, or you feel miserable when these people are away from you, or maybe you get hostile and bitter and harsh in your relationships. This is because of your attachment within your own mind. And oftentimes these are the hardest attachments to eliminate. Your life partner, your children, your parents, your siblings, people like this, your mind is probably holding on and having really deep attachment in these relationships. And as long as that's the case, you're going to have difficulties in these relationships. So I'm going to teach you how to love these individuals and how to enjoy your relationships, but not be attached to them, meaning forming your inner feelings based on what's going on with them in your life. And this will help you get more freedom and more liberation, so that you don't have to keep having these emotions going up and down based on what's happening to the people around you. Then I'm going to teach you how to share the path to enlightenment with children. If you have children, or you're thinking about having children, this can be really helpful for you. If you have nieces or nephews, or even if you'd like to share the path with your brothers or sisters or your parents, this talk will actually help you. I have it structured around guiding children, because children can be guided on the path really nicely. And because they're so young and their mind isn't very polluted, they can actually make a lot of progress on the path to enlightenment. But the things that I teach you here, they're also applicable to like your siblings or your parents, or even your coworkers and things like this. You can use some of the techniques that I share here to be able to help other people if they choose they would like to learn. Then I'm going to teach you how to develop and maintain relationships, how to choose wholesome friends and a life partner, because who you choose to involve in your life in terms of friends or a life partner is very impactful. You can make wise choices here about your friends and your life partner, and you can have magnificent results. Or if you're making unwise decisions, you can have just the opposite. So I'm going to guide you in how to make decisions about who to involve in your life without actually judging the other people and without looking down on them in negative and degrading ways, but instead how to include people in your life that are doing things that are wholesome or wise, because this is going to impact you based on who you involve in your life. So it's helpful to be able to make wise choices about who to involve in your life. And I'm going to give you some guidance of how to do that, where you're not judging other people and looking down on them, but instead you're practicing discernment or wise decision making. Then I'm going to teach you how to practice the teachings in the workplace. If you're learning and practicing these teachings and you're only practicing them at home in your personal relationships, you won't actually get to enlightenment that way. You're going to need to learn how to integrate these teachings into your day-to-day work life. So I'm going to teach you how to take some of the teachings that the Buddha taught you and how to integrate these into your professional life as well. Then I'm going to teach you this art of the friendly no. How to say no without saying no, right? What this is that when you're around unenlightened beings and people who aren't on the path to enlightenment, when you say they invite you to a party and you say, no, I can't come, oftentimes they're going to get angry. They're going to get frustrated. They're maybe going to think that you're not a very good friend, and they might actually push you away. This is called aversion. When they start feeling angry and they start feeling sad that you're not coming to their party or things like this, when you say no to them about something, or say someone asks you to borrow money and you say, no, I can't let you borrow money, they can experience painful feelings from that. Their mind is causing those painful feelings, but they don't realize that. And because of this, people can actually push you aside, and you can lose friends and you can lose relationships based on just saying the word no. So I'm going to teach you about this way of practice that you can actually say no without saying the word no, because the unenlightened mind oftentimes really doesn't like this particular word. So I'm going to teach this to you on Friday. And then in terms of our meditation, I'm going to be teaching you about breathing mindfulness meditation. We're going to be doing that together. Some of you guys have already learned this with me in other courses. And then we're going to be building on this, and I'm going to help you to learn loving kindness meditation. What this loving kindness meditation is going to do is it's going to transform your mind away from anger, hatred, ill will, bitterness, hostility. It's going to completely rewire your mind where you can be loving and kind with all beings around you. So we're going to be really focusing on loving kindness meditation as part of this course. We're going to be doing this in the seated, lying, standing, and walking positions. These four positions are the four that the Buddha taught, and you'll be able to do breathing mindfulness meditation on all four of these positions. The loving kindness meditation is done in the seated, lying, and standing position. We don't typically do it in the walking position, but you'll be able to learn all of these because your body can't permanently be in the same position all the time. And then we're going to be doing Buddhist chanting together. So I'm going to be teaching you guys that as we're doing it together. Then I'm going to teach you continued support on the path to enlightenment, how to get continuous support, and also how to integrate these teachings into your day-to-day life. Because what you learn here in the next 5 days, it's going to be really helpful for you. But if you don't know how to integrate what you've learned here in the classroom into your day-to-day life, it's like, okay, well, we had a great 5 days together. We had a lot of fun. But the way that you really get the most benefit out of the 5 days that you spend here is that you integrate these teachings into your life. And that's where the real results start coming through. So I'm going to teach you how to get continued support beyond this course and how to actually integrate these teachings into your day-to-day life. Okay, so this is what you're going to be learning as part of the entire course. Do you guys have any questions on what you're going to be learning? No questions? Okay, so for those of you guys that are online, you guys can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. At any time, you guys can ask questions right along with all the students that are here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to guide you guys in a meditation session to get us started. I'm going to start with the chanting. Then I'm going to come in with some guidance. There's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're all meditating together. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And then after that, that's where I'm going to start the class, helping you to understand this eightfold path, the core central teaching of the Buddha. So I can see all of you guys have been here before and studied with me at different times, including those of you guys that are online. So you guys already know about the chants, and there's laminated sheets over there, and you guys can chant along. You guys already know that this isn't a rite or ritual or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. We're just easing our mind into meditation and actually getting more benefit out of the meditation itself. There's nothing mystical or magical here with these chants. So if you guys would like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. And then afterwards, I'll come back in with some guidance, helping you guys to understand how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. Let me get these air cons set up just right. There we go. All right. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Ho Tang Mahakawan Hang Apiwa Teami Sawakato Mahakawata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato สัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะหะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโอโตภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in naturally through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that the mind moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโพโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, so I'm going to start with this teaching of the Eightfold Path, helping you guys to understand what this is using the words of the Buddha. But before I teach this to you, I would like you to understand something that's really important as you get going on the path to enlightenment, is that it's important that you don't believe any of the teachings that I share with you, whether it's in the class, whether it's in the book, whether it's any conversations that we have, whether it's anything that anybody else shares about the teachings of the Buddha. It's important never to believe the teachings. With belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because somebody either convinced you to believe it or you convinced yourself to believe it. You need to get to the point where you know with wisdom what is the truth. And the way you get to wisdom is not through belief, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. The way you get to wisdom and knowing the truth is you learn something, you examine it, and you investigate it. You reflect on it to independently verify it, whether it's true or false, and then you practice it in order to integrate it into your day-to-day life and actually train the mind. This is how you come to understand the truth. Because what the Buddha is actually doing is he's teaching you the natural laws of existence. The natural laws of existence are functioning and affecting all of us, whether we're aware of these natural laws or not. Just like the natural law of gravity, we were all affected by this, whether we were aware of it or not. As we were growing up, we struggled and had difficulties with this natural law because we lacked wisdom of it. We fell down, we hit our head, we bumped our elbows. We had all kinds of difficulties with the natural law of gravity. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law. And now we're at the point where we can climb ladders, we can ride bicycles, we can get on airplanes and fly all over the world because we fully awoke to the natural law of gravity. We understand to tie our shoes tighter. We understand to not be so giddy and bouncing around on the sidewalks when we walk is like we did when we were children. We look at the surface of the sidewalk when we're walking down the street to ensure that we're walking in a way that we don't fall down and we don't hurt ourselves. When you have wisdom about the natural laws, you're going to naturally make wiser decisions. The Buddha didn't teach rules and commandments, and I'm not going to be teaching you rules and commandments either. He's not teaching you those kinds of things. He's teaching you about how the world is. He's not explaining to you the way the world should be. And then if everybody follows these rules and commandments, that then life's going to become peaceful for everybody. It's not about going out into the world and convincing people about a bunch of beliefs. That's not what the teachings of the Buddha are. It's for you to be able to learn the natural laws of existence. Because when you understand the way the world is, then you will navigate the world more peacefully. But as long as you don't understand the natural laws that are governing around the world, then you will struggle. You will have difficulties. That's what the anger is. That's what the stress and the anxiety, the guilt and the shame and the fear. This is an indication to you that you're not understanding the world that you live in. And when you understand these natural laws more and more, you'll be able to awaken to this enlightened mental state where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, where you don't experience any discontent feelings any longer. All the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all of this is eliminated. And this is what's going to really help you to build harmonious relationships, because your personal, professional relationships can really blossom. Because when you're bitter and harsh and hostile, when you have animosity in your mind, that's going to come out through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, and you're going to damage your relationships. So by you awakening to these natural laws, you'll get to the point where you'll have personal, professional relationships that are blossoming, that are at ease. You're not even going to be in a bad mood anymore. When you understand the natural laws, you're going to tend to make wiser decisions because you're now informed with wisdom of how the world functions. So with the natural law of gravity, for example, I put this glass of water that I have here, I always put it behind me. I don't put it out here in front of me. Not because it's a rule or it's a commandment, not because anybody told me not to put it here, but I just know because of a wisdom of the natural law of gravity, if I put that glass of water there, it's only a matter of time before it gets knocked over and we're going to have water all over the floor. So you naturally make wiser decisions like putting that cup of water behind you so that it doesn't get tipped over. And now you'll have better results in the world, right? So these natural laws that the Buddha is teaching you, they're affecting you, whether you're aware of them or not. And the more that you gain wisdom of these natural laws, which includes how to train your own mind and how your mind is functioning, you'll be able to navigate this world more peacefully. So I'm going to be teaching you this Eightfold Path, but it's important to not believe any of it. You would like to learn it, you would like to reflect on it to verify it, and you'd like to practice it. And I'm going to show you how to do that as I'm walking you through it. There's 8 individual factors of this Eightfold Path. This is a core central teaching of the Buddha. Everything else that you learn on the path to enlightenment plugs into this Eightfold Path in one way or another. I'm going to teach you right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is organized into 3 sections: wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. And we're going to be using the original words of the Buddha here. But again, you're not believing anything that you're learning. In order to understand the 3 in order to understand this Eightfold Path, the first thing that you need to understand is you need to understand right view. This is the very first step. This is the foundation that lays the foundation for everything else that you're going to learn on the path to enlightenment. Whether it's about the Eightfold Path or any other aspect of the path to enlightenment, you need to establish right view. So here's the words of the Buddha on right view from the Eightfold Path. He says, "In what, monks, is right view? It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the wisdom of the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view." So what he's doing here is he's pointing to another teaching, and he's saying that is right view. What he's pointing to is a teaching called the Four Noble Truths, because the Eightfold Path, as I mentioned, is a core central teaching that everything else plugs into. And rather than teaching the Four Noble Truths here, which he's already taught in other discourses, he's just pointing to the Four Noble Truths, and he's saying that's what right view is. And then if somebody studies the Four Noble Truths, then you'll understand what is right view. So what I've done here is underneath of this line, I've put the top section of the Four Noble Truths so you can build confidence that what the Buddha is talking about in the Eightfold Path as right view is the Four Noble Truths. You can see the connection between the two of these. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths so that you can understand what they are. In order to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to first understand the Three Universal Truths. We refer to these as truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true. Other people know that they're true. But in order for you to benefit from this and actually establish right view, you're going to need to know that they're true. Establishing right view is to understand the Four Noble Truths, where you understand the problem in the mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. In four simple statements, you can have a breakthrough to understanding what's causing all your anger, your sadness, your frustration, and all these other discontent feelings, and how to actually eliminate them. But before you understand the Four Noble Truths, these are like building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. The Three Universal Truths are going to help you to be able to understand the Four Noble Truths. So let me show you how to learn, how to reflect, and how to practice. So starting with this first universal truth, the universal truth of impermanence. What this is sharing with you is that the things in the world around you are constantly changing. They arise, they change, and they fade away. This is called a conditioned object. The Buddha is explaining to you the way the world is, that anything that you see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, these are all impermanent, meaning they are not permanent. They are temporary. And you need to be able to see this in the world around you. This is a building block to understand the Four Noble Truths, to understand the problem in your mind, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward. You need to be able to see the wisdom that everything around you is constantly changing. These are called conditioned objects. So anything you see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, they're all impermanent, constantly changing. They arise, they change, and they fade away. This is called a conditioned object. Then there's things called unconditioned objects. Unconditioned objects, they don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. An unconditioned object are things like the natural laws of existence. The Buddha's teachings that he taught 2,500 years ago, the natural laws that he described, those natural laws haven't changed because they don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. This is why his teachings are just as applicable today as they were 2,500 years ago. They're timeless. The books and people's memories have changed about what his teachings are, but the actual natural laws haven't changed themselves. So when we understand his teachings, we can see that these natural laws are an unconditioned object because they don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. These natural laws are going to always be the same. And then enlightenment itself. When you attain the enlightened mental state, it's a permanent mental state because you've eliminated the cause in conditions that are producing the anger and the sadness and the frustration. You've gotten to an unconditioned mind. In the unenlightened state, your mind is conditioned. You have certain pollutions that are in your mind that are causing these discontent feelings. So those discontent feelings, they arise, they change, and they fade away. But by the time you get to enlightenment and you've purified your mind, now your mind is unconditioned. So this enlightened mental state, that peace, the calm, the serenity, the contentedness, and the joy, it's a permanent mental state that is always there. Okay, so this is a little bit on the universal truth of impermanence. But now that was just the learning. That was the intellectual understanding. That was the part where you're starting to understand the teachings. Now you need to move into reflection to be able to independently verify if what I just shared with you is the truth. because I'm teaching you about the natural laws. And because you're in the world, you should be able to look around the world and independently verify what it is that I just shared. I shared with you anything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through your mind. I've shared with you that they are all impermanent. And I'm making that statement as a universal truth. But now, because you don't believe it, you move into reflection and you start looking around the world and try to see if what I'm sharing with you is true or whether it's false. The way you do this is you try to look for something that's permanent. Because if you can find something in the world around you that is permanent, then that means this isn't a universal truth. Anything you can see, hear, smell, taste comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind. And what I suggest that you start with in order to reflect on this are things that you're already familiar with. You're very familiar with this human body, for example. So you can ask yourself, is this body permanent, meaning it never changes, or is this body impermanent, meaning it's constantly changing? So what would you say? Is this body permanent or is it impermanent? What would you say? It's not permanent. It's impermanent, right? Ever since conception, when the egg and the sperm came together, this body's been constantly changing. We're getting taller. Our skin complexion changes. Our hair color changes. Our length of our hair changes. We cut our hair. It grows some more. Our hair gets gray. We start losing our hair. We get pimples. We get moles. We have other issues with the physical body. This body is constantly changing. We get taller, we get shorter, we get bigger, we get smaller. All of these things are constantly changing with this physical body. What about your relationships? Are your relationships permanent or are they impermanent? If your relationships are permanent, you've had exactly the same people in your life your entire life. If your relationships are impermanent, that you've had people coming and going in and out of your life. So what would you say? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? They're impermanent, right? They're constantly changing. What about your bank account? Is your bank account permanent or is it impermanent? It's impermanent, right? It's constantly changing. It's going up and down and up and down. Some people's goes up, up, up. Some people's goes down, down, down. I'm not sure what category you're in, but your bank account's constantly changing, right? What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? It's sunny, it's raining, it's windy. Some places it's snowing and sleeting, and there's hail, there's hurricanes and typhoons. All this kind of stuff is impermanence. So we could go on and on and on. We can look at countless things in the world, and you'll see that every single thing that you look at is impermanent. And if you need to do that, do that. Take a few days, take a week or two, or whatever time you need, and walk around the world and look to see if you can find something that's permanent. When you are here at the temple, you can look down at the wood floor. You can see that the wood planks are different lengths. They're different color. They're different textures. You can see that there's a certain number of people in the class now, and that's going to change over the course of 5 days. We're going to have people coming and going in and out of our course. You're going to see all kinds of different change throughout your day-to-day life. So this is a universal truth that you need to deeply soak into the mind and realize that you're in an impermanent world. Things are constantly changing. And this is going to be a building block to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. Now we're going to talk about the second universal truth. This is the universal truth of discontentedness. If you've studied the teachings of the Buddha in other places, they might have referred to this as suffering. You might have heard that word being used. But I don't use that word because it doesn't accurately reflect what it is that the Buddha taught. I'm going to explain to you what this universal truth is. Then I'm going to circle back and explain to you why I don't use the word suffering. In the original teachings of the Buddha about this universal truth, he uses the word dukkha. You might have heard this. This is a Pali word. And as I mentioned, most people translate that to suffering. But you're going to see, based on the way the Buddha taught it, the word suffering isn't the wisest word to be able to use. Instead, the way to translate this is that the Buddha is talking about how the mind becomes discontented, or is experiencing discontentedness. Because when he talks about this universal truth, he talks about pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. These are the three feelings that the unenlightened mind experiences. And these are conditioned feelings, meaning there's some condition that's causing it. The mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition. Whereas if the mind is experiencing happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria, these are very pleasant to experience. If you're experiencing painful feelings, you might be experiencing things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. These are very painful to experience. Then you've got neither painful nor pleasant. I've put boredom and loneliness there, but some people say that's very painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category if you like. But shyness is a good example. It's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. Or if somebody you don't know comes and sits really close to you on public transportation and your body is touching their body, you might say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant, you're kind of uncomfortable. Your mind is dissatisfied. Your mind is discontent in that situation. So these are the three feelings that the unenlightened mind is going to experience. Pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. And these are conditioned feelings, meaning that based on some condition, the mind is going to experience these feelings. So if you wake up in the morning and you see that it's sunny outside and you get really excited and really happy, that's a conditioned feeling. Based on the condition that the sun is out, you are now going to experience a pleasant feeling of happiness or excitement. But then you go take a shower and you come out and you see it's raining and you were planning to go outside and play that day, and now you're frustrated, you're agitated, you're annoyed because it's raining, right? This is called a conditioned feeling. You're now experiencing that painful feeling of anger or frustration based on some condition. And then there's these neither painful nor pleasant feelings. So an enlightened being is beyond these feelings. They don't experience conditioned feelings anymore because they don't base their inner feelings on some condition. An enlightened being is already happy before they ever woke up in the morning. And when they see it's sunny outside, it's like, sweet, I'm going to go outside and play today. This is going to be fun. And now you go take a shower and you come out and it's raining and it's like, it's raining. Okay, well, I guess I'm not going outside. So maybe I'll stay home and read a book. Maybe I'll go to the mall, watch a movie. Maybe I'll invite some friends over. I'll cook some dinner. They can have some food. You can maintain your joy. You can maintain your happiness because you didn't base your happiness on the sun. When the sun changes, and it will change because of impermanence, then you can maintain your joy. But if you base your happiness on the sun, when the sun is gone, you're not happy anymore, right? Or if you base your happiness on your bank account, when your bank account is up here, you're happy. Well, that means when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated or irritated or annoyed, right? This is called conditioned feelings. And this is what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. So now you don't believe this, right? You don't believe this because the Buddha is describing the unenlightened mind here. He's explaining how the mind becomes discontented, or it experiences discontentedness. Even when the mind's experiencing happiness and excitement, it's discontent, it's shaken up. It's unsteady, it's uncalm. If you've ever been so excited you like tripped and fell, then you know what I'm talking about. Or maybe you dropped something and broke it because you were so excited and you were so happy. This is the discontent mind. It's unsteady, it's unstable, it's shaken up. So since you know that your mind is unenlightened, you can ask yourself, does this describe what you experience? Do you experience all three of these feelings? Pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant? And do you form your feelings based on some condition? You get a raise at work, you get so happy, you get so excited. But then you get fired or you get laid off, you get angry and frustrated. This is a conditioned feeling. You're basing your inner feelings on some condition. And this is what you're used to, and you think that this is normal. And it is for an unenlightened mind. But the enlightened being doesn't experience these conditioned feelings. They are beyond this. They are experiencing unconditioned happiness, unconditioned joy. Their mind is just always happy, always cheerful, always bright, always uplifted. Okay, so you need to independently verify this and think through the various feelings that you've experienced in your life and ask yourself, does this explain that? Do you experience pleasant, painful, and neither painful nor pleasant? And if you think that there's a certain feeling that you experience that doesn't fit into one of these three categories, let me know and we can talk about it and I can help you to better understand. Now, like I mentioned, some people refer to this as suffering. I don't refer to it that way because the word suffering describes the painful feelings really well. When you're angry and sad and frustrated, you're feeling guilty and shameful and stress and anxiety, you'd probably say you are suffering. But if your mom called you up and said, hey, I heard you got a new house. I'm going to come visit you this Friday and we're going to cook some food. We're going to have a great time. And you got all excited and so happy from that. Would you say you were suffering in that situation? Or if that person you don't know came and sat next to you on public transportation and your body was touching their body, would you say you were suffering in that situation? Probably not, right? So the word suffering explains the painful feelings, but it doesn't explain the pleasant feelings in the neither painful nor pleasant. So in this scenario, you're only understanding 33% of the teachings of the Buddha. You're missing 66% of his teachings. And if you're missing 66% of a teacher's teachings on an important topic like this, how could you ever get to the goal of enlightenment? So the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness describes the full spectrum of emotions and feelings that the unenlightened being experiences. So that's why I use that instead of suffering. So I encourage you to use the same word of discontent, discontented, or discontentedness, because then you'll understand what the Buddha is teaching you about the unenlightened mind and how it experiences these conditioned feelings. Then we've got this universal truth of non-self. This is actually a solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. The Buddha discovered these 10 individual pollutions in the mind. They're referred to as the 10 fetters. We refer to them as the fetters because during the lifetime of the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, if you were a prisoner and they were looking to keep you confined to a certain area, they would put a fetter on your ankle. What a fetter is a shackle and a chain and a ball, and it keeps you trapped in a certain area. They would have prisoners like in a field, and they would just all be sitting around with this fetter on their ankle, a shackle, a chain, and a ball. And now they couldn't roam around the world. They were confined to that particular area. So when the Buddha discovers these 10 individual pollutions in the mind, he refers to them as fetters because they're keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state, where you keep experiencing anger and frustration and these other feelings over and over and over again. The mind is trapped. So what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're working to eliminate the 10 fetters. Because when you eliminate the 10 fetters and you get these fetters off your ankle, now you're free and the mind can be peaceful and joyful and happy all the time. But when you have these fetters on your ankle, your mind is bound up and now you're trapped and you're continuing to experience the frustration and agitation and annoyance and all these other feelings over and over and over again. So what you're working to do is eliminate these 10 fetters from the mind. So this universal truth of non-self is actually the solution to one of the fetters. I'll explain to you guys what this fetter is, and then I'll explain to you the solution of the universal truth of non-self. The fetter that this solves is called personal existence view. What personal existence view is where the mind is clinging to this body, or it's clinging to the mind itself, thinking that this is who you are. You will cling to your self-image, and you'll cling to your self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. So if you're clinging to your self-image, what the mind's doing is it's wanting to be perceived by other people in a certain way. And when you're being perceived that way in terms of your self-image, you will feel happy. But when you're not being perceived that way by others, then you'll be angry or frustrated or annoyed or embarrassed or something like this. So if you were ever in a social situation and you spilled spaghetti sauce or chocolate ice cream on your clothes and you were embarrassed in front of other people, this is your personal existence view. Your mind was clinging to this self-image, wanting to be perceived by others a certain way. And as long as you're being perceived that way, you'll be happy. But when you're not being perceived that way, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed or embarrassed. If you've ever had a wrinkle or a mole or a gray hair, or you started losing your hair, or you started getting some extra weight or something like this, and you looked in the mirror and you were shaken up by that, you were discontent, that's your personal existence view. If you were like me when I was a teenager, I used to get the mousse and the gel, and I used to sit there at like 13, 14 years old. I was on my way to school, and I was trying to get every little hair in exactly the right spot so that I could go out into the world and feel good about how this body looked to other people. I would sometimes do this for so long, I would miss the school bus, right? Because I'm sitting there trying to get every little hair in exactly the right spot. This is personal existence view. If you've ever stood in front of your closet and you're thinking, who am I going to see today? And how do I want to look? What is the favorite shirt that I want to wear? What is that pair of pants or that skirt or those shoes or that jewelry that I want to wear in order to impress those people so I can look a certain way? If you've ever put on clothes, looked in the mirror and like, that's not the way I want to look today, and then you switched your clothes out and you put on different clothes, this is personal existence view. The mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way, and you can only feel comfortable if you're being perceived that way by other people. So this is personal existence view, where the mind's clinging to this body, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. Then the mind also clings to a self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. The self-identity are things like your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. Your mind can cling to any number of things as I am this. I am Canadian. I am Chinese. I am German. I am American, right? I am an Aussie, right? Any of this I am. It can be about your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. It can be about any number of things that you think that I am this. Maybe I am a police officer. I am a Buddhist teacher. I am kind. I am a great tipper. I am this, I am that. So now the mind's clinging to a certain identity. If you've ever thought that I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend. And now when you're in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend, you feel great. You feel wonderful. You feel whole. But then when you guys broke up and now you're single, your mind didn't identify with I am single. And now you might have wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship because the mind felt uncomfortable in this singleness, because in the mind identified with I am a husband, I am a wife, I am a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend. So now when you're single, the mind didn't like that. It felt conflicted. And the mind thought the way to solve this is to hurry up and get right back into another relationship and reassuming that identity of I am a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend, I'm a husband, I'm a wife. But this didn't actually solve the problem, because the problem is the personal existence view, that the mind is clinging to this, thinking that this is who you are. If you've ever been in a restaurant and 2 tables over, they were disparaging the people that you come from. Maybe they said, all Chinese people are this, or all Americans are that. Maybe they were talking in a positive way or maybe a negative way. And when they were talking in a positive way, all Americans are friendly and loving and kind and warm and gentle. I've never heard this before, but this is potentially something that somebody could say sometime, right? Well, if you identify with I am American, now when you hear that, now you're going to be like, that they're talking about me. Wow, I feel so great. Yeah. But now 2 tables over, someone's being degrading and disparaging about people from the country that you come from. And they say all German people are this, or all Americans are that, or all Canadians are this. And they're being negative and degrading and disparaging. Well, if your mind is clinging to that as your identity, you're going to be angry. You're going to be frustrated. You might be ready to start fighting, right? Because now they're talking about me, right? So your mind can cling to any number of things, thinking that this is who you are. One time I had a student call me up and they said, hey, ever since COVID, I've really been having trouble going into the coffee shop. I go into the coffee shop, they're using this cashless system that I order my coffee. It takes me 30 seconds to place this order, and they turn around the computer screen and I'm supposed to, do my payment. And they've got on there, give a tip of 20%, 25%, 30%, and I don't tip. And I feel really uncomfortable in this situation. And I don't understand why I feel so uncomfortable, because I am a great tipper. And I am a great tipper, but I don't tip here, and I feel really uncomfortable in this situation. I don't think they deserve a tip because they only took my order for 30 seconds. Why should I give them a tip? And this person was talking about how uncomfortable it made them feel to not be giving a tip. And they kept saying, I am a great tipper. I am a great tipper. And I said, this is your personal existence view. You're clinging to the identity of I am a great tipper. And as long as you're tipping, you feel great. But in this situation where you're not tipping, you're conflicted with that and you feel uncomfortable, right? So the mind can cling to any kind of identity, right? So you might cling to, I am a Buddhist teacher, right? Well, you can ultimately get to the point where you understand the universal truth of non-self. What the Buddha is teaching you is this body, it's not you. This mind is not you. Don't cling to it expecting it to be permanent, because it's not permanent. As long as you cling to this body and wanting it to be permanent, now when things change, you're going to be discontent. If you cling to your identity, then when things change, you're going to be discontent. So if my mind clings to, I am a police officer, and now when I'm doing that job, I feel really great. But then 10 years into the job, I get injured and I can't do the job anymore. And now maybe I'm a taxi driver. And the whole time I'm a taxi driver, I'm disgruntled and I'm angry and I'm frustrated because the mind identifies with, I am a police officer, but I can't do that job anymore. Here I am being a taxi driver. And now the individual is frustrated or agitated or annoyed because they don't identify as, I am a taxi driver. So if you can train your mind to let go of these things, realizing that there is no self, then you can be more comfortable in the world because you don't cling to these things as being who you are. So you can get to the point where you understand, for example, that this body was born on a land that is referred to as America, but the mind doesn't have to adopt the identity of I am American. Just because you were born in a certain country doesn't mean you have to adopt the identity of I am German or I am Chinese or any of this other thing. But the problem is that all through our life, we've been taught just the opposite. We have sports teams, we have national anthems, we have flags, we have all kinds of things that are teaching us that we need to identify as something, right? And now we go around accumulating all this identity. But then when all these things start changing, that's where somebody can feel very lost and very confused in the world. You might interact with people that might say, I don't even know who I am anymore. Maybe you even said this. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't even know who I am. I need to find myself. I need to find my true self. You know what? I'm going to go to Thailand and find myself. I need to find my true self. I'm going to go on this journey to find myself. And somebody might come here to Thailand and they might find new hobbies, new activities, new friends. They might find a new job. And now they go back home about a year or two later and they say, I found myself. I know who I am again. But none of that stuff is you. The hobbies, the friends, the job, the activities that you do, that's not you. That's not who you are. As soon as you cling to any of this stuff, thinking that this is who you are, when it changes, you'll be lost and confused in the world. And now you might go on this journey to find yourself. Right? So the Buddha is teaching you that there is no self. This body, it's not you. This mind is not you. And the moment you try to cling to it and try to claim it as this is who you are, when that stuff starts changing, you'll feel lost and confused in the world. Okay? So the way that you independently verify that there is no self is through these different methods. Think about yourself when you were a child, when you were a teenager, when you were early adulthood, and now. Think about your personality, your character, how you viewed yourself. Has it been exactly the same through all of those time frames, or the way you viewed yourself, has it been constantly changing? What would you say? It's constantly changing, right? So you can see there's no self there because it's constantly changing. Here's another way. If your arm was amputated and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? If you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? Someone say no. Yeah, someone's saying no, right? You guys are saying no. Well, there you see intellectually, you understand that this body is not you. You understand intellectually. But what personal existence view is this confusion, this misunderstanding that the mind has, that it firmly believes that this body is you. Because when you're in a situation where somebody says something positive or negative about this body, you're going to either get happy and excited or you're going to get angry or frustrated, right? That's because your mind intellectually understands this body is not you, but the mind is confused. It thinks that this body is you. Because if this body was actually you, you would have answered that question differently. When I asked you if your arm was amputated and you have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? You would say, yes, I'm less of a person because this body is me and now I have less body, so that means I'm less of a person. But you guys didn't answer it that way. You said, no, I'm not less of a person. I just have less use of a hand and an arm. I only have one hand and one arm now, right? So this is where with personal existence view, with this pollution in the mind is confused and it has this misunderstanding. So now in situations where people are talking about this body, either positively or negatively, you start experiencing feelings because of that, because of the confusion that the mind has because of this personal existence view. Here's another way you can verify it. Point to yourself. Where are you? Can you point to yourself? Maybe everyone's realized non-self already. Nobody's pointing. Usually people point here, or they will point here. They will say, here I am right here, right? Well, if you do this and you think I am here, this is me, then you need to look at what you're pointing to. What you're pointing to is a shirt, right? You need to ask yourself, is that who you are? That shirt you're wearing, is that you? If you took off the shirt, or if I took off my shirt and I held it up and we pointed to it, is that David? Is that who David is? Are you that shirt that you have? You say no, right? So that shirt's not you, right? So let's throw away the shirt. Where are you? And someone might point again. And you need to look at what you're pointing to. You're pointing to skin at this point. Ask yourself, is that who you are? That skin that you've got? Is that you? Right? If you took off that skin and you held it up and we pointed to it, is that you? That skin? Is this me, this skin that I have? You say no again? Okay, so let's throw away the skin. That's not you. So let's point again. Where are you? Someone might point. Okay, what we're pointing to is we're pointing to ribs, to muscle tissue, to fluids, to organs. None of those bits and pieces and parts are you. But the confusion and the misunderstanding of the mind, it clings to this and it thinks that this is who you are. Right? So this is the dilemma that the mind has in the unenlightened state, is that it hasn't realized non-self. It doesn't have the wisdom that this body is not you and this mind is not you. It clings to it. It wants it to be permanent. And now when you experience change, the mind isn't comfortable with that. So you see a wrinkle and you're all upset, or you see a pimple or a mole, you're frustrated or agitated or annoyed. You start getting some gray hair, you don't like that. You start getting a little bit of fat here and there, your mind doesn't like that. You get frustrated or agitated. You spill something on your clothing, you get embarrassed in front of other people. This is because of personal existence view. But the solution is to realize non-self, is to train your mind to realize that this body is not you and this mind is not you. And this comes with training. So far, we're talking about the intellectual aspect of it, and we're helping you to be able to reflect on it and independently verify it. But over time, you're going to need to practice the teachings in order to get to the point where you realize non-self. But this is just an introduction to it. And sometimes people understand it here and sometimes they don't. So if you don't really understand this 100%, it's okay, but you're welcome to ask questions if you like. So I'm going to pause here and see what questions you guys have on any of these three universal truths. If you guys have questions, if you could use the microphones, as you guys know here. And then for those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Janae has a question here on Zoom. She says, so because the natural laws of existence are permanent, there can be more than one Buddha because Gautama Buddha didn't make this up. He just taught about what he learned about the natural laws. So there can be more than one Buddha, but there wouldn't be more than one Buddha at one time in history. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, he was a Buddha, and there wasn't any other Buddhas in existence during his lifetime. But after his lifetime, there can be another Buddha who comes into the world and be able to see the natural laws very clearly. And then that individual would describe them. But they would describe them essentially the way that the Buddha described them. They would be the same exact teachings, but maybe with some modern analogies and some things like this. But it would be exactly the same teachings because the same natural laws that the Buddha awoke to and he had to cultivate wisdom about in order to get to enlightenment, it's the same natural laws that you would need to awaken to today in order to be able to get to enlightenment. So a new Buddha would be able to describe those natural laws using analogies and descriptions and examples based in today's time, but it would be the exact same natural laws that he's describing. Okay, let me see if we have any questions anywhere else. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. All right, so remember, these are building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. And then we got one more building block before we talk about the Four Noble Truths to establish right view. This is called craving, desire, attachment. This is the mind's wants and expectations, the clinging, the holding, the grasping. This is the way the mind longs and yearns for something external, longing, yearning, and wanting things to always be pleasurable. The mind is seeking satisfaction outside. It's seeking satisfaction through material possessions and objects and things like this. The mind will long and yearn for a particular object. The craving, desire, attachment isn't the object itself. It's the way that the mind is longing, yearning for it. It's like an unquenchable thirst where the mind just thinks that this external thing is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So if you've ever been in the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes and you got so excited with that brand new pair of shoes or a mobile phone or a video game or a new car or a new house, or maybe it's more money or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, the craving, desire, attachment is inside the mind. The way the mind is longing, yearning for this thing. It's not the object itself. There's no harm in having a pair of shoes. There's no harm in having a mobile phone and things like that. That's not the attachment. It's the way the mind's longing, yearning for it. That's the attachment, where the mind is almost thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases it and chases it and chases it. It's like an unquenchable thirst. The mind might feel painful feelings and you're like, oh, I know what I need to solve this problem. Let me get some more money. Let me chase after that for a while. That's what'll solve it. Let me get some more money. And you chase that for a while. Or you're like, oh, I know what I need. I need a new boyfriend or girlfriend. Let me chase after that for a while. That'll make everything better. Oh, I know what I need, a nicer car or a bigger house or a new job. Let me just chase these things. And the mind thinks that something external is going to provide lasting satisfaction. So it chases and chases and chases. You guys know what I'm talking about? This pulling, this longing, yearning for something external, thinking that this is going to make you feel complete or feel whole. You know what I'm talking about? Have you experienced this? Liz is saying, yeah. What about the rest of you guys? You know what I'm talking about? Okay. Because you guys have experienced these where you're longing, yearning for wanting something to be permanently pleasurable. Okay. So now that we have the building blocks, let's talk about the Four Noble Truths. In 4 simple statements that you can independently verify, you're going to understand the problem, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward. So the first noble truth is explaining the problem in the unenlightened mind. The problem is that everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness, those conditioned feelings. That's the problem that you're experiencing. That the mind is happy, excited, elated, thrill, euphoria. It's got all these pleasant feelings. But then it's only a matter of time before you have the painful ones, the anger, the sadness, the frustration, the loneliness, the boredom, the shyness, the resentment, the jealousy, any of these discontent feelings. The mind's essentially going up and down and up and down. These are called conditioned feelings, the discontentedness. That's the problem that you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. That you get happy and excited, but it's only a matter of time before you're frustrated and annoyed about something. That's the problem. Then the second noble truth is explaining the cause of this problem. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. So I'm going to say that a few times. I'm going to give you some examples. The discontentedness, those conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant, they are caused by craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the wanting things, the seeking satisfaction externally. The mind wants things to be permanent, but yet it lives in an impermanent world. Okay, so let me give you some examples so you can see this and independently verify it. Okay, so think about when you were together with that boyfriend or girlfriend. When you guys first came together, you probably got all kinds of pleasant feelings. You were so happy. You were so excited. There's this new person in your life showing you some affection. They're interested in you. They're laughing at your jokes. You guys are going out to the movies. You're going out to dinner. You're going to the park and having great conversations. You might be having intimate contact where you're having sex. It's like, wow, so much pleasure. Everything's brand new. It feels so great. Right? But then over time, as you guys are together, you start having expectations and you want certain things from this person and they want certain things from you. And you can't fulfill their wants and their expectations. And they can't fulfill your wants and expectations either. And you guys get angry and frustrated. And now you guys might break up and you decide to end the relationship. Now you might be angry, you might be frustrated, you might be lonely or bored, you might be missing this person to a certain extent, right? This is not because of the love. This is not because you care about this person. This is the craving, desire, attachment. This is the mind holding on, wanting this person to be permanent. And because you experienced impermanence, the mind doesn't understand that in the unenlightened state. It doesn't understand the universal truth of impermanence, but instead it's holding on. It's craving permanence. It's wanting this person to be permanent in your life. And as long as you guys were together, there was a certain amount of happiness. But as soon as the relationship ended and you experienced impermanence, you now experience the anger and the frustration and the sadness. You can see this if you've ever had somebody close to you that's passed away or that has died, right? Grandma or grandpa, mom or dad, brothers or sisters. As long as they're alive, you might be really happy. But then when they die, you grieve, you're sorrowful, you're sad. You're not a bad person. You haven't done anything wrong. It's just that the mind is craving permanence, wanting these people to be permanent. And when you experience this impermanence, the mind doesn't like that because it doesn't understand impermanence. It thinks that things are permanent. So the mind's craving this permanence. Because grandma and grandpa were born, they had to die. Everybody has to die. Every one of us are going to die. But if you crave permanence, when they die, your mind's holding on and craving for them to be permanent, you'll struggle and you'll have difficulties during that time frame. Or if you think back to a wedding that you went to, maybe you or the people around you were grieving or sorrowful. Here's brother or sister going off into the world, or cousin or friend or coworker going off into the world with somebody else. Your mind might start grieving, or the people around you might start becoming sad. It's like, hold on a second. That's my brother. How dare you take my brother away, right? There's this sadness that's coming in. That's my sister. Well, how can they take away my sister, right? This is like a joyful time. They're going out into the world with a new person. But here the mind is discontent because it's holding on and it's craving permanence. And it thinks this relationship is permanent. And now this wedding ceremony represents some impermanence that the mind doesn't understand. Right? Or think about a time when you got dropped off at college or university, or maybe you dropped your kids off at school for the first day of school or something like this. You could see their mind, and maybe your mind too, was a little bit sad perhaps, right? They were holding on. They thought mom and dad were permanent. And here they go off into the world at 3 years old or 2 years old or 5 years old. And now they're crying and they're so upset because they're holding on to mom and dad. Right? This isn't the love that's causing that, because you're just going to school for the day and you're coming back. Nothing's changed about our love. The only thing that's changed is we're not together. You're going off into the world by yourself and I'm staying home. And now the mind craving permanence, it doesn't like that because it doesn't understand the universal truth of impermanence. It doesn't understand the world is constantly changing and you can't be together with mom and dad permanently. Right? You can see this if you've ever got a brand new car or some other brand new item. And now you got this brand new car, for example, you drove it off the parking lot of the dealer and you take it and you go park it and you go into the store. And when you come out, there's a scratch on your car. Oh my goodness, you might be so upset. You might be so frustrated. You saved for so long to buy this car. You wanted this car so badly. Your friends are looking at you and looking at how accomplished and how successful you are. And now you've got this scratch on the car and you might get frustrated or agitated or annoyed. It's not the scratch that's causing that. And it's not the person who scratched your car. That's not what's causing the anger or the frustration. What it is the mind's craving permanence. It's wanting this car to be permanently beautiful. And now when the mind's holding on and craving permanence, but now it experiences this impermanence, this scratch, now the mind's frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Now, we're not talking about what's wise or unwise, because when we walk through a parking lot, we aspire not to scratch anybody's car, right? But the fact of the nature is this car is going to get scratched. The paint's going to fade. The upholstery is going to get ripped or torn. It's only a matter of time because of impermanence. Whereas if our mind craves permanence and we want this car to look a certain way permanently, we'll struggle when we experience impermanence. So that's the cause of the discontentedness, this craving, desire, attachment, this longing, yearning, wanting things to be permanent, when in reality you live in an impermanent world. It'd be wonderful if nobody ever scratched our car, but that's not the world that we live in. And now, with the lack of wisdom of this second noble truth, what the mind does when that anger is arising, it attributes the anger to something external. And what you might do is you might push people away out of your life. You might have done this. or you pushed away relatives, or you pushed away friends or family members or coworkers or things like this. This is called aversion. The mind firmly believes in its unenlightened state with a lack of wisdom that the problem is this person or this situation. So you'll push people away, and you'll push a situation away thinking that that's going to solve the problem. Or the second thing that you might do is you might be bitter and harsh and hostile through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. This is like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to fear this person into doing things your way with harshness and bitterness and hostility. And this really wears on your relationships, right? This is why one of the reasons why you can't have harmonious relationships with everyone around you, because there's this bitterness and hostility coming out through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And then the third thing that you'll do when you don't understand this second noble truth is you'll put your expectations on people, and you'll try to control them and force them to do things your way. And the mind thinks that that's the way to get to happiness, that if I can just get my cravings fulfilled and people will do things my way, then everything will be wonderful. So the mind is trying to get a world where everybody does things my way. Because if somebody does something in the way that I don't like, the unenlightened mind will push that person away and try to create a world where everybody's doing things your way. Or you'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile, trying to fear people into doing things your way. Or you'll put expectations on people and try to control them to do things your way, right? And this is the unskillfulness that the mind experiences. And because of that, you can't live harmoniously with all beings, that your relationships really struggle because people either get pushed away out of your life, or you're bitter, harsh, and hostile with them, so they choose to leave out of your life, or you put your expectations on people and they feel pressured and now they leave out of your life because they don't want to be around that pressure of someone pressuring them to do things your way. So if you understand the second noble truth, then you understand what the cause of the problem is within your own mind. It's not external. Now remember, you're not interested in believing what I share here. You need to independently verify this. So take a moment right here to independently verify this. This is how you verify it. Think about a recent time where you've been angry, frustrated, agitated, or annoyed. It might have been this morning. It might have been yesterday. It might have been last week. Look at that situation. At that time, you might have been trying to blame somebody else, because that's what the unenlightened mind does, is it looks for somebody else to blame for the problems that you're experiencing. But instead, look at it with these fresh eyes. There was something your mind wanted. You were expecting something. And if you got it, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, you got frustrated or angry or annoyed. Do you see it? You see it? Yeah, you see it, right? If you don't see it, let me know. Because I've had people do that before. I've had someone tell me, hey, David, I went to work the other day and my house was beautiful. It was immaculate. I went to work. I worked really hard for like 8 or 10 hours. I came home and my wife had this craft project all over the house. The house was a wreck. And I walked in and I got frustrated. How did my mind cause the frustration? I wasn't even there. Didn't she cause me to be frustrated? She's the one who messed up the house. How did I cause my own frustration? All I did is walked in the door, right? Well, yeah, that person caused their own frustration because they had the expectation that their house was going to look a certain way permanently. They wanted this house to look a certain way permanently. And when they left for work, they had that image in their mind. And when they came home and they experienced some impermanence, their mind didn't like that, right? So you need to be able to understand that all these things are impermanent. And as long as you're craving permanence, your mind's going to experience discontent feelings when you're experiencing change. Look at the times in your life where you've experienced change. You maybe changed your living location, you changed your job, you changed your relationships. When you start experiencing a bunch of change, your mind doesn't like it. Even if you've decided that this is what you would like to do, even if you decide you're going to move to this other country and take a new job, it feels kind of uncomfortable for you. You're not quite sure about it because the mind is craving permanence. It's trying to hold on to this thing that you're used to and you're familiar with. Okay? So this is the cause of the problem. The second noble truth is helping you understand that your own mind is causing these feelings, and you can independently verify it by looking through your life. Now, I know that you've probably been in arguments with people where you've been adamantly trying to convince them that what they are doing is making you angry, and they have to stop doing what they're doing, or else you're going to continue to get angry. But I'm sharing with you, that person did not make you angry. Now, they might have been doing something that was unwise, but they're not the ones who made you angry. It was your own mind. You can look back over every argument, every time you've ever been frustrated, every time you've been irritated, and you'll be able to see that in every situation, your mind was craving something. You were wanting and expecting something to be permanent. And when you find this and you see this, you can have a real breakthrough. Because as long as you go around thinking that other people are causing you to be angry, you'll never fix it. You'll never fix the problem. You'll never fix the discontent feelings because you don't understand what the cause is. But when you understand the cause, then you can implement the solution and you can actually fix it. But as long as you're blaming other people and you're thinking other people are causing you to be angry, you might go around the world trying to fix other people and trying to get other people to do things your way. But unfortunately, there's 8 billion people in the world, and you can't train them all to do things your way. That would be really challenging and really difficult to get everyone in the world to do things your way, right? That would be a very challenging feat. The other thing you could do is you could train one mind. Instead of training 8 billion, you could train just one. Do you know whose mind you need to train? Yours, right? If you can train your mind, then you can get to the point where you understand impermanence, and now you can be peaceful and joyful because you understand that, of course, people aren't doing things the way that I do that because of impermanence, right? There's more than one way to do things in the world. So what you need to be able to do to eliminate the discontent feelings is to eliminate the cravings, desires, attachments. That's the third noble truth. If you can eliminate this longing and yearning, this wanting things to be permanent, this grabbing onto things, craving permanence, you can actually get to liberation. You can get to freedom of strong feelings. You can get to peace and joy. Because when your wife or your husband or your boyfriend or girlfriend or your kids do things differently than you, well, of course, because of impermanence, of course they're doing things differently, right? And you just understand that it's impermanence. But as long as your mind's craving permanence, you're going to still experience discontentedness. So eliminating craving, desire, attachment is what's going to eliminate your discontent feelings. The fourth noble truth is explaining the complete solution. The path to eliminating craving, desire, attachment is the eightfold path. That's the complete perfect plan that's going to lead to the complete elimination of craving, desire, attachment. It starts with right view, but then each one of these steps is actually helping you to be able to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, where you're no longer forming your inner feelings based on something like a craving, desire, attachment. But it all starts with right view. What wrong view is to blame other people for the feelings and the emotions that you're having. And that's what we've done in the past. And you see it doesn't work because if that person that you pushed away out of your life was the source of your painful feelings, when you push them out of your life, you would be peaceful for the rest of your life. But you see that they weren't the real source of your problem because when you push them out of your life, you still get angry, you still get annoyed, you still get frustrated. So wrong view would be to blame other people for the feelings that you're having. Right view would be to understand that it's your own cravings, your own desires, your own longing, your own yearning, wanting this permanence, wanting things to be a certain way. That's right view. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move into right intention, and then I'm going to open up to questions from you guys. Right intention and all these others, they don't take as long to teach, But this right view takes a long time to teach because it's so important, and you really need to establish right view. You need to be able to see very clearly that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Because why else would you do any work on the path to enlightenment? If the problem is other people, why are you here at the temple learning? Right? If everybody else is causing you to be angry, everybody else should be here. You should be at home chilling, right? It's everyone else that's causing these feelings. But you're doing the right thing. You're here learning, right? That's what right view is. So now we're going to be talking about right intention. These are the words of the Buddha. He says, in what, monks, is right intention? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. This, monks, is called right intention. So there's three things that he's talking about here. And some people translate this as right thinking or right thought. So right intention or right thinking or right thought is to practice renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. What renunciation is being willing to let go of your false beliefs, your false opinions, your views. These things aren't serving you very well at all. There are certain false opinions and certain false beliefs that you have in your mind that are causing you difficulties and struggles. But you're not getting rid of your false beliefs and bringing in new beliefs. You're actually getting rid of your false beliefs by bringing in wisdom. And when you see this wisdom is conflicting with your beliefs, you get rid of your beliefs, and now you have wisdom. One of the first false beliefs that you need to get rid of is the belief that other people are causing you to be angry. That's one of the very first false beliefs that you got to get rid of. And if you just independently verified the Four Noble Truths, you can see the wisdom that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And now what you can do is you can practice the intention of renunciation, where you're letting go of these false beliefs. There's certain unwholesome things that you're doing right now in terms of your speech and your actions and other things like this that you're going to need to be willing to let go of. If you're not willing to let go of them and practice the intention of renunciation, you'll never get to enlightenment. So while this path starts with right view, understanding that the problem is within your own mind, the very next thing is you need to be able to practice renunciation, where you're willing to let go of your false beliefs, your false opinions, your false views, the unwholesome things that you're doing. Because as long as you're doing these unwholesome and unwise things, you're going to keep experiencing problem after problem after problem. Then you need to practice the intention of non-ill will. Non-ill will is a double negative. And in English, when you say non-ill will, which is a double negative, it's the same as a positive. So you need to practice the intention of goodwill. Goodwill is having a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This is active goodwill towards all beings. You need to have that intention or that thinking or that thought that you would like to see goodness for everybody. Then there's the intention of harmlessness, where you're incapable or disinterested in causing harm to other beings. Because as long as you cause harm to others, this harm is going to come back to you. You can't cause somebody else to be discontent, but you can cause them harm. When you're causing harm to their material possessions, to their physical body, to their reputation, to things like this. You can cause harm to people. And as long as you're causing harm, this harm is going to come back to you. So you need to get to the point where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to other people. And this starts with setting the intention in your mind that you're disinterested in causing harm, that you're going to practice the intention of harmlessness, because any harm that you put out is just going to come back to you. So you would be disinterested in causing harm to others. And you're going to need to have that thinking or that thought within your own mind. So now a little bit of a summary here. Right view is the Four Noble Truths, accepting responsibility for your own feelings, your own intentions, your speech, and your actions. Understanding that what you experience in life is coming from your own decisions. It's not coming from other people. It's coming from within your own mind. So that now and forever, whenever you get angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed, instead of looking externally for someone to blame, look inwardly and try to figure out what are the cravings, what are the desires, what is the longing, what is the yearning, what does the mind want, and it's not getting it, and therefore I'm angry and I'm frustrated. Because that's where the real work is. That's the real inner work here. To be able to transform your mind is to look inward and be introspective and reflective. So if you're practicing right view, you're not going to be blaming other people for the things that you're experiencing in your day-to-day life. Then you would like to practice right intention, where you have the intention or the thinking or the thought of renunciation, where you're willing to let go of your false beliefs, your opinions, your unwholesomeness, where you have the thinking or the thought or the intention of loving kindness or goodwill, active goodwill towards all beings, a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, and the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm. Do you guys have any questions on either of these two steps of the Eightfold Path? No questions? Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a little bit of a break for you guys. It's about 5 minutes to 11. So why don't we come back at 11:15? And when we do, I'm going to then teach you guys the next two sections of the Eightfold Path. The next two sections are the moral conduct and the mental discipline. So this will help you to be able to understand what the Buddha taught here to help you get to enlightenment. And it's all based on this wisdom section. So that's why I took my time to really walk you through it. So enjoy your break, about a 20-minute break. Come back at 11:15 and I'll teach you guys the rest of the Eightfold Path. Thank you guys for your interest to learn, and I'll see you guys after break. Okay? You guys ready to get started? Yeah? Start 15 seconds early, 30 seconds early? Okay. I'm just watching the time here. Okay, so we're going to move into this moral conduct section of the Eightfold Path. Right speech, right action, right livelihood. Then we're going to be talking about this mental discipline section. Whenever we're talking about the moral conduct and the teachings of the Buddha, it's important to understand what he's teaching you is the natural law of karma. He's not teaching you rules or commandments. He's not trying to convince you to do any particular thing, because remember, his mind's already peaceful. He's already joyful. He's already figured out this world. He's figured out life. All he's doing is helping you understand what it is that he figured out about this natural law of karma, and then inviting you to be able to learn it, investigate it, examine it, and practice it for yourself so you can see the truth. So when you're learning things like right speech, right action, right livelihood, sometimes people can kind of think back to childhood when they were maybe being taught rules and commandments and these kinds of things. And it's important that you don't do that, but you learn, reflect, and practice, because you're going to see the Buddha teaching you about speech and actions and things like this. And what he's showing you is this cause and effect, or this action and result. He's showing you how when you make certain decisions about your moral conduct, either wisely or unwisely, you're going to experience certain results coming back to you. And when you make decisions more and more wisely based in your moral conduct, you're going to experience more and more harmonious relationships. So when I teach you right speech, right action, right livelihood, this is the natural law of karma, showing you the cause and effect, or action and result, so that you can clean up your moral conduct and the way you interact with people. Because when you clean that up, that's where you're going to see your relationships really blossom, because you're not causing harm through your speech and your actions and your livelihood. So it's your life, your decisions, and your results. You're going to experience either wholesome or unwholesome results, or wholesome or unwholesome karma. This word karma, or some people call it karma, if it translated to just one English word, I would just use that English word because it's easier for everybody. But this Pali word of karma, and I use karma because this is the original language that is in the Pali text, or the original words of the Buddha uses the word karma. This means cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. It's not anything mystical or magical. It's not about punishments and rewards. It's not even about who's to blame or who's at fault. It's essentially a sequence of events that when we make wise decisions, we will experience wholesome results, or wholesome karma. And when we make unwise decisions, we will experience unwholesome karma, or unwholesome results. So the more you understand about this natural law, then you'll be able to make wiser and wiser decisions that is producing more and more wholesome results in your life. So when we talk about awakening to enlightenment, what that means is cultivating wisdom about the natural laws. You need to cultivate wisdom. The more wisdom you have of the natural laws, the more awake you are, right? So that's what it means to be awake, is to cultivate wisdom about the natural laws, namely this natural law of karma. So you're going to see here with right speech where the Buddha is helping you to be able to see the natural law, and then you don't believe it. You learn it, reflect on it, and practice it, and see the truth for yourself. So here he says, "In what, monks, is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech." So each one of these things that he's talking about, it's based in craving, desire, attachment. Remember, it's the Eightfold Path that's going to lead to the elimination of craving, desire, attachment. Whenever someone's lying, there's something you want. And if you tell the truth, you're not going to get it. And because the mind wants this thing, it lies in order to get that thing. But now you cause difficulties in your life because people discover your lies and they find you to be untrustworthy and undependable, unreliable. And now you suffer in terms of your personal and professional relationships. They really struggle. So when you eliminate lying and you only tell the truth, then your mind can be at ease and you're not functioning through craving, desire, attachment. Because if you've ever done a lot of lying, then you know that you were trying to figure out, what did I tell this person? What did I tell that person? What did I tell this person? Your mind was almost obsessively trying to figure out what you said to one person versus another. And it's very difficult to keep your lies straight. And now this is going to really wear on your own mind. So how could you get to peace and your joy if your mind is overactive, constantly trying to figure out what you said to one person versus another? But you can clean that up by just speaking the truth all the time. Speaking the truth doesn't mean you say everything that you you know necessarily. Now, if you're in a court of law or something like that, of course, it's wise to do that. But sometimes people ask me, like, if somebody ran into my house during World War II and they were being chased by a soldier and they were hiding under my bed and the soldier came to my front door, what am I supposed to do? Tell them that the person's under my bed? The answer is no, you don't have to say that. Telling the truth doesn't mean you expose everything you know. If a soldier came to the front door and is like, "Where's Barbara? Did she run into your house? I thought I saw her run into your house." "Oh, you're looking for Barbara? Why don't we look over there by that bush? Let's go see if we can find Barbara over there." I haven't lied. I'm just redirecting their mind somewhere else. I know Barbara's under my bed, but I'm not going to tell this soldier that so that they can kill her. I'm going to redirect them somewhere else. I haven't lied. Right? So you can actually still tell the truth. You're not lying here. You're just choosing not to share that information because that person doesn't need to know that information. So you'd like to refrain from lying where you're always telling the truth, because then you can be dependable and reliable and trustworthy with the people around you. You would like to eliminate slander or gossip. This is where you're damaging someone's reputation, where if you walked into a room and you have a candle and someone else has a candle, someone might think like, "Oh, if I put out that person's candle, my candle will shine brighter." But in reality, you'd like both candles to be shining in the room, right? So sometimes there's a craving in the mind that you want to look good in front of other people. And you might think that if I basically damage this person's reputation, I will look better. And that's the craving, desire, attachment that the Buddha is helping you to get rid of by eliminating slander and gossip. Now, again, you can independently verify everything that I'm sharing here. If you look at the times that you've slandered or gossiped people, it's caused difficulties in your life. If you're gossiping with a group of friends, when your back is turned, they're going to be gossiping about you. That's your karma, right? Because you're gossiping about other people, now they're gossiping about you. At the height of this, if you're slandering people, you can actually get murdered. This is where investigative reporters, they go on the news and they talk about somebody in a slanderous way, and next thing you know, they end up being murdered. Remember, the teachings of the Buddha aren't explaining to you the way the world should be. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And if you go out slandering and gossiping about people, you're damaging their reputation, you're causing harm, they're going to want to cause you harm too. So that's why the Buddha teaches you to refrain from this, because it eliminates that craving to look good in front of other people where you're trying to diminish other people and degrade other people. And it also keeps you safe so that you're not getting beat up or murdered or any of these other things. Then the Buddha teaches you to eliminate harsh speech. This is like your tone, your tempo, and your word choice, the way you talk with people. You would like to speak gently, because when you're speaking harsh and bitter and hostile, there's a craving in your mind. You want something, and you think that if I talk really harsh and bitter with this person, they're going to give it to me. They're going to do what I want because I'm fearing them. I'm being harsh and bitter and hostile with them. So if you eliminate that and you learn how to speak gentle with people, you'll see that it actually works much better, because the people around you will choose to do things on their own rather than based in fear because of your hostility and your bitterness. If you have to fear people into doing things your way, that means they're only going to do those things as long as you're around and as long as you're fearing them, as long as they're fearing you. When your back is turned and you're away, they're not going to do things your way anymore because they haven't cultivated the wisdom of why it's important to do those things. So whether it's your children or your coworkers, or if you're a boss and you have employees, you're not interested in fearing people into doing things your way. You're interested in teaching people and guiding people, helping them cultivate wisdom and speaking gently through your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. And this is going to help you to have more harmonious relationships. Because as long as you're bitter, harsh, and hostile, you can't have harmonious relationships. People aren't going to relate to you in a peaceful and joyful way. So you'd like to clean that up and eliminate your harsh speech. What frivolous speech is if you've ever been just like randomly talking about unpurposeful, unbeneficial things where there's really no point to it. Sometimes people call this idle chatter, where it's just like yada, 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 yada. a yada 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 yada. It's like really broadcast. It's not a conversation. You're like broadcasting to other people. If you've ever done this, people are like, oh my goodness, when are they going to stop talking? Oh my gosh. It's like there's a craving in your mind to talk, and you're just talking about pointless stuff, right? So what you would like to do is get to where you're talking purposefully, beneficially, clear and concise, because then people won't have to work so hard to understand what it is that you're sharing. So if you're speaking frivolously, you would like to eliminate that, so that then that eliminates your craving to just be speaking and speaking and speaking and speaking all the time. So these are the 4 aspects of right speech: eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. And once you get that underway and you're doing that really well, that's going to clean up a good amount of your gamma as it relates to your speech. But then you're going to want to dive deeper into this, and you're going to be interested in learning and practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. That's what I've got down here. This isn't part of the Eightfold Path, but remember, I mentioned how the Eightfold Path is a core central teaching, and there's other teachings that plug into it and they connect into it. This is a teaching that plugs into the Eightfold Path. This is ultimately what you would like to be practicing, where you're speaking at the proper time. What you say is true, it's gentle, it's beneficial, and it's with a mind of loving kindness. You would like to bring this into your practice more and more. What it means to speak at the proper time is that you're not interrupting people, that you ensure that your mind is prepared to talk. Because when you're angry and frustrated and irritated, that's not the proper time to talk. And then the third aspect of that is making sure it's the proper time for the other person to talk. If they're angry and bitter and hostile and harsh, not the proper time to talk. Nothing beneficial is going to come out of that conversation. So if it's not the proper time to talk, then you just don't talk, right? So you don't like it when people interrupt you, so why would you interrupt other people? And you know that when you've been bitter, harsh, and hostile in your mind, that's all that's come out through your speech, and you've damaged relationships in the past from that. So you would like to restrain your mind, pull your mind back. Don't allow the mind to crave to talk. Instead, do it when your mind is prepared to talk, and do it when the mind of the other person is prepared to talk as well. Then what is said is true. That's what we talked about up here, that you only speak the truth. Speaking gently, that's what we were talking about up here, that you eliminate harsh speech. You like to pay attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. And you need to be very selective in this, because in languages like the Thai language, we have all kinds of ways of speaking gentle. This is where you hear Sawadee Kap, or women Sawadee Ka, or we say Kab Kun Nakab, Sawadee Nakab. We have all these different ways to speak very warm and very polite and very loving. So in the English language, or whatever other languages you speak, you're going to need to find those warm and gentle words so that people know you're being warm and gentle. So in English, I will typically refer to people as sir or ma'am, or I will say thank you or please, or oh, that was very kind of you. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you, right? So you can use this kind of gentle words, your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. You're going to need to pay attention to that and get better and better at that. In relationships where you have craving, desire, attachment, that's going to be the hardest. Your life partners, your children, your parents, your siblings, that's where you tend to have harsh speech. And in the past, you might have thought they deserved this harsh speech. But now you're understanding that that anger that you were having, that's where your harsh speech was coming from. It's actually coming from your own mind. It's not coming from mom or dad. That anger is coming from your own mind. So if you put that out in your intentions, speech, and actions, you're just going to damage your relationships. So if you would like to get to harmonious relationships, you're going to need to speak gently with all the people around you, and realize that you're not going to be able to go out into the world and snap your fingers and instantly do this. It's going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that you're going to gradually be able to learn how to do this better and better. Then you would like to speak beneficially. This is eliminating the frivolous speech. This isn't necessarily about the topic that you're discussing. It's about the method that you're discussing things. You'd like to be clear and concise and precise in the way that you talk. Because when you're talking unbeneficially, you're just like rambling and rambling and rambling, pointless talk. You would like to be very clear and very concise in the way that you're speaking. And then it makes it easy for other people to understand what it is that you have to say, and you can be really helpful and beneficial to that person. Then you would like to wrap everything that you're saying with a mind of loving kindness. You would like to be speaking with this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This is the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. So now, this is the intellectual learning on this. You don't believe it. Don't believe anything that I ever say. Look at something like this, the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, and look at certain situations where you had conversations that didn't go so well. Look at these 5 factors. There's probably one or more of them that you weren't practicing. You weren't speaking at the proper time. You weren't speaking the truth. You weren't speaking gentle. You weren't speaking beneficially, or you weren't speaking with a mind of loving kindness. And because of that, the conversation didn't go well. And maybe the other person wasn't speaking with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech either. And that's how you can see that these are natural laws. Whether you're aware of them or not, they're affecting you. So you can see that where you didn't use these, the conversation didn't go well. But then you can look at the other side of this too, because you've had conversations that have gone very well. Maybe some of the conversations you had at break went very well as you guys were getting to know each other and meeting each other, right? And you can look at these 5 factors and you can see like, yeah, I was practicing those, right? Before you even knew what they were, you've been practicing these in different conversations that you've had. And because of that, the conversation went very well. Because again, these are natural laws. They're affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. So in the past, when you were speaking with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, you were doing so without the wisdom of these 5 factors. But now if you know the wisdom of these 5 factors, you can intentionally start practicing these. Consciously start practicing these in your day-to-day relationships. And that's where you'll see your relationships improving. They'll become more harmonious. What we're talking about here is doing something that in the Thai language we refer to as barami. This is a Thai word. What you're doing is establishing barami. What barami means is the one who people listen to. Each village in Thailand, there's typically some village elders who people consider to be very successful in life. And if you have a problem, you usually go talk to the elders of the village. And when I say they're successful in life, I don't mean monetarily successful. I mean that they're successful in their relationships. And people know that, these people have barami, the one who people listen to. They're very influential in their community, and that's because they're practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. So if you're interested in being influential within your personal and professional life, you're going to need to establish barami, the one who people listen to. And the way that you do that is you practice the 5 factors of well-spoken speech over a period of 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. More and more you're interacting with people through the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. They will consider you to be wise, even though they don't know these 5 factors. They will see that when you speak, you don't cause harm to other people. And now people are going to be influenced by the things that you say. You can be very helpful and very impactful in your personal life and in your professional life as well. So these are the 5 factors of well-spoken speech that you're going to need to gradually dial in closer and closer, and understand that you're going to find it to be the most challenging in the relationships that you're the closest in. Your life partner, your parents, your siblings, people like this. It's going to be very challenging for you, but you're going to need to keep working at it and working at it through that gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. In the book, this Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, you're going to see a lot of details on speech, because we can cause a lot of harm through our speech. And while during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was referred to as right speech, we might think about it as right communication, because there's many ways that we can communicate nowadays. It's not just speech. It's text messages, voice messages, chat, social media, lots of different ways that we communicate. So we would like all our communication to be with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, because you could go into a job interview and you could knock it out of the park. And these people are like, I'm going to hire this person. Wow, we're going to give them a great salary because they are absolutely professional. But then when they check your social media and they see you're bitter and harsh and hostile in your social media, they're probably not going to hire you. You're not going to get the job offer, right? So you would like all your speech, all your communication to be with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. If you're over on the keyboard, pounding out a keyboard email with a bunch of anger and hostility, that's not the right time to be talking. It's not the proper time to be communicating. So instead of hitting send on that email, you hit save on that email. Come back a few hours later when you calm down, or a few days later, and look at it and decide whether or not it's wise for you to send that. Because if you send that anger and hostility out into the world, it's just going to come back to you. So in this book, you've got a lot of details in there about having this right speech or right communication, and you can read it and see it in there. As you're learning the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, you're going to need to memorize these. And all the other aspects of the Eightfold Path, you're going to need to memorize it and commit it to memory in order to be able to practice it. While you're in the process of doing that, if you can remember to speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, that's what you would like to be able to do. But that's not going to get you to enlightenment. That's why you need the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. But this can be like a little bit of a training wheels for you, that whenever you're in doubt, maybe you can't remember the 5 factors of well-spoken speech 100%, just think polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. And this will help you along those lines. But in the meantime, be working on building up your wisdom of the 5 factors of well-spoken speech and practicing that more and more. So you'll find a lot more details in the book under right speech and all these other things that you can learn. Then there's right action. The Buddha says, in what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action. So here he's talking about 3 impactful actions that would be harmful if you did these actions, that this harm is going to come back to you. But this is not a complete and exhaustive list. He's just giving you 3 very impactful ones, and then you can figure out the rest. He's not going to give you all of them, because essentially what he's teaching as part of right action is to not cause harm through your bodily actions. If you go out into the world and you cause harm through your bodily actions, this harm is going to come back to you. So if I went on an airplane and I dragged my suitcase through the aisle of the airplane and I was running over people's feet and bumping into their knees, people are going to get bitter and harsh and hostile with me. I might end up in a fight, right? So you would like to have all your bodily actions to the point where you're not causing harm to others. So the Buddha could have never put in here every single bodily action that would cause harm, right? Notice he doesn't say, don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face. Well, if you're wise, you can look at this and you can know exactly what he's teaching you is that would be unwise. Because if you punch someone in the face, they probably punch you back. Or they're going to pull out a knife or a gun, or their friends or their family is going to come after you. That's the natural law of karma, the cause and effect. So here he's just giving you 3 really impactful ones. And then all the others you're going to need to figure out as you're navigating the world is not to cause harm through your bodily actions. Now, if you've studied the 5 precepts, the Buddha goes into a lot more detail about these 3 things and some others, where he talks in detail about what it means to not kill. He's not teaching you to preserve all life at all costs. He's teaching you to live compassionately for the welfare of all living beings. So you're going to need to study the 5 factors or the 5 precepts. He also has other details about refraining from taking what is not given, and also sexual misconduct. He actually explains this in detail. He talks about causing harm, like having sex with minors, having sex without consent, going outside of your relationships, and things like this. So I teach the 5 factors of I teach the 5 precepts in other courses and other retreats, and it's also in the book as well, that you can see the original words of the Buddha on the 5 precepts. You're going to need to study that in order to be able to practice right action, because the Buddha gives you much more illuminating language around right action. But I like to give you a heads up, even before you go see the 5 precepts, that this sexual misconduct, it doesn't include same-gender relationships. Sometimes people think that when they see the word sexual misconduct, that same-gender relationships would be harmful. But you need to ask yourself, if there's 2 loyal, loving, consenting adults having sex with each other, who are they causing harm to? They're not causing harm to anybody. If they're 2 loyal, loving, consenting adults having sex, if it's a male and a female, or a male and a male, or a female and a female, they're not actually causing harm to anyone. Sometimes today, people think that these individuals are doing something wrong or harmful or something like this. But from the very beginning of time, there's been same-gender relationships. There's never been a time in human history where every man had sex with a woman and every woman had sex with a man. And the reason why I know that is because the universal truth of impermanence. It tells us that not every man is interested in having sex with a woman, and not every woman is interested in having sex with a man. So ever since the beginning of humanity, there's never been a time where everybody had sex with the opposite gender, because that would be permanence if that was the case. But we understand the universal truth of impermanence, that this isn't the case. The Buddha was aware of same-gender relationships. He talks about it essentially in his teachings, but he doesn't teach anything about it. He just makes the observation that it's occurring, and then he just basically moves to the next topic, essentially, because there's nothing to teach about it other than, hey, this is what you're going to see. And he was talking about it 2,500 years ago. So he was aware of it, but he didn't put it in his teachings in terms of harmful sexual activity, because he was awake, he was wise. 2,500 years ago, he understood 2 loyal, loving, consenting adults aren't causing harm to each other. So this is how wise this individual is, because 2,500 years ago, he already understood this, where today we have a certain portion of the population that doesn't understand that there's no harm when 2 loyal, loving, consenting adults are choosing to have sex. So if you prefer same-gender relationships, or you know someone who does, you're not causing any harm, right? But you're going to need to investigate the 5 precepts to understand this particular aspect of the Eightfold Path in more detail, because the Buddha really gives you much more illuminating language than what he's sharing here. This is just like a little summary, and he's pointing to the 5 precepts, and that's where you'll find the real detail. In the book, you're going to see that I share things about substances that cause heedlessness. This is the words of the Buddha. He talks about gambling, and he talks about other things as well. So you're going to need to refer to that to be able to understand how to not cause harm through your bodily actions. Then the Buddha talks about right livelihood. This is the 5th aspect of the Eightfold Path. What a livelihood is how you choose to sustain your life. If you're sustaining your life off of causing harm to other beings, this harm is going to come back to you. So you would like to have a livelihood where you can sustain your life without causing harm to others. So here in the Eightfold Path, the Buddha says, in what, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, the noble disciple, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood. So here he's just saying something very general and very broad, because it's a core central teaching. And then he's pointing to other teachings. And he has these other teachings. If you know where they're at, you can go find them, which is right here, where he's talking about 5 livelihoods that would cause harm if you actually did these. This is business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. Because all of these livelihoods are causing harm to other beings. And if you're sustaining your life off of causing harm to others, this harm is going to come back to you. So you can take each one of these and you can reflect on them and independently verify and see for yourself that what the Buddha is teaching is true. But I'm just going to take one of them and help you see how to do this. So let's just say I was selling substances that cause heedlessness. Let's say I was standing on the street corner selling cocaine and crystal methamphetamine and heroin into the community. Well, now I'm causing harm because these individuals are getting addicted to this substance. They're going out and stealing and robbing and things like this in order to bring me money, in order for me to have money. Right? I'm sustaining my life off of causing harm to other people. Well, now standing on the street corner, I could get beat up. I could get murdered. I could get arrested. I could get robbed. Somebody might come and rob me. I might get addicted to these substances myself. This is the unwholesome karma, or the unwholesome results of my unwise decisions, that I can easily get murdered or beat up or robbed as a result of standing on the street corner and causing harm in the community. But this natural law of karma is functioning at a much higher level than the human laws, because in most places, the human law is, it's illegal for me to stand on the street corner and sell these substances into the community. But remember, this is the natural law of karma. Right? This is functioning at a much higher level. So even if I was working, say, at a liquor store, right, my government isn't going to arrest me for working at a liquor store. They might say, hey, you can go work at a liquor store. You can sell that whiskey. We're not going to arrest you. But the human laws are not perfect because they have errors, because they're created by human beings. The natural law of karma doesn't have any errors. It's fair and equal. It's unbiased. So if I was working in a liquor store, I could get robbed. I could get beat up. I could get murdered. At the very least, I'm going to be dealing with intoxicated clientele coming in and out of the liquor store. Or if I'm a bartender or something like this, I'm going to have to deal with all of this stuff. How can you get to a peaceful and joyful life and a peaceful and joyful mind if you're having to deal with intoxicated people day in and day out? That's not going to be very fun for you, right? So this natural law of karma is functioning at a much higher level than the laws of human beings, the laws of society. So where your government might not arrest you for working in that liquor store, if you know the natural law of karma, you might say, not interested in working in that job, and you would find a different job. So you can look at each one of these and you can independently verify it. So I'll let you do that, because if you're right now in a particular livelihood that you would like to move out of, or if you're not in a livelihood and you're looking to get a new livelihood, you might decide to look at these more closely, because you're going to need to select a livelihood that's not going to cause harm to others. The Buddha even teaches you how to perform a livelihood in a way that can produce the very best results for you. He talks about eliminating scheming, flattery, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. Because when you're doing these kinds of things in your livelihood, it's going to cause difficulties for you. So for example, say I was a politician or a police officer. There's no harm in being a politician or a police officer. So if I'm just writing laws as a politician, or say I'm a mayor of a city, I'm not causing any harm to anybody. But if I was scheming, if I was corrupt, and I was doing backhanded things, now I'm causing harm. And maybe 10 years into my career, people find out that I've been corrupt, and now they won't reelect me. And now I have difficulty sustaining my life because I've been scheming, I've been corrupt, and now I can't earn a livelihood. I can't earn the money that I need to be able to sustain my life. What flattery is, this is where you're having insincere comments in order to get people to buy things from you. If you've ever walked into a store and someone was like, oh, that shirt looks so good on you. That really brings out the colors of your eyes. I have some earrings that'll go really good with that. You're going to look so beautiful. You're going to look so handsome. Come take a look at these earrings. Right? You're like, ugh, right away. They're starting to flatter you and try to get you to buy things, just being insincere with you, just to try to get you to buy things. So if you did this in your livelihood, people are going to be turned off by that, and you're not going to be very successful in your livelihood. So you would like to not have these insincere flattery comments just to get people to buy things from you. Then what hinting is, this is like where you're unclear and you're not concise and precise in the way that you communicate in your livelihood. So say that we were all on a project team and we needed to go brief the boss about the project that we're working on. We'd like to be clear and concise and precise. And now we can be much more professional and have better results in our livelihood. Whereas if we were hinting and we weren't really clear and concise, this isn't going to produce the best results in our livelihood. What belittling is where you're degrading and diminishing other people, like your coworkers, your business partners, or your competition. Sometimes we think that in business, we're supposed to degrade our competition and make them look bad. And that's going to make us look good. And then we're going to be more successful in our livelihood. But you're going to find just the opposite. When you're actually degrading and diminishing your competition or your business partners or your colleagues and your coworkers, it's going to cause difficulties in your livelihood. And you're not going to be able to build a professional livelihood where you can sustain your life in a successful way. So you're not interested in belittling people. What pursuing gain with gain means, this is where you're basically just working a job for a paycheck, that you're just wanting to make money. That's all it is. It's not that you're investing money and then using that to make more money. That's not what the Buddha is talking about here. What he's talking about is the way that you maybe take a job just for the money, that you don't really care about the work, you don't really care about the product that you're selling or what have you. You just want the money, and that's it. And if you go to work and you're only motivated by the money and that's it, eventually that craving is going to wear off and you're going to feel very bored, very mundane, very dull in your job. If you've ever had that kind of job where you were just showing up for a paycheck, you probably dragged yourself to work each day. When your alarm clock went off in the morning, you're like, oh my gosh, do I have to go to that place again? Right? You weren't motivated. What the Buddha is teaching you to do is to have ambition and motivation and enthusiasm about the work that you do, where it doesn't even feel like work anymore. You just thoroughly enjoy what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And you may not be there right now with your livelihood, and that's okay. But over time, you would like to gradually move towards practicing where you can have enthusiasm and motivation and ambition about your livelihood. What I just described to you is called the first fold of purification, where you're not practicing one of those 5 livelihoods, and you're also not practicing any of these things. But what you would ultimately like to get to is what's called the second fold of purification. That's in volume 12, chapter 14. So if you're in between jobs right now, if you're unemployed and you're looking to get a new job, or if you're in a job that you don't particularly care for and you're looking to get a new job, you might decide to go look at chapter 14 of volume 12. So volume 12, chapter 14. It's over there on the bookshelf. You can also download it from the website and you'll be able to see that. Volume 12, chapter 14. You'll see all the teachings from the Buddha about livelihood so that you can select a livelihood that you feel enthusiasm and ambition about, so that way you'll be motivated, encouraged. You'll like to get to the point where it doesn't even feel like work anymore, that you go to this place that even if you didn't get paid for it, you would still do it because you enjoy it that much. That's what you would like to be able to get to, because then you can just have enthusiasm all day long with the work that you do. So just summarizing the moral conduct here, is we were talking about right speech, where you're not causing harm through your verbal conduct, but also through all your communication, whether it's verbal, text, chat, post, emails, all of this should be harmless, using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Then you would like to ensure you're not causing any harm through your bodily actions, that all your bodily actions should be harmless. And then improving your livelihood to the point where you have enthusiasm, ambition. You're not causing harm to anybody through your livelihood in terms of the livelihood that you choose or how you conduct your livelihood, doing it in a wholesome way. And this is what's going to help you to improve your moral conduct and clean it up. And this is going to help you to build more harmonious relationships because you're not causing harm to the people around you. Do you guys have any questions on the moral conduct section? You have a question? Yep.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. We'll tackle them one at a time here. My first thing, I'm having trouble reconciling the natural law of karma with the cause and effect in what we learn in science, where every action has a reaction that is equal and opposite. So in the natural law of karma, you are putting out love, but then receiving it back. So I'm having trouble reconciling it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's actually the science that you just described. It's the same thing. Every action has an equal action, right? So when you're putting out love, you will receive love as well. This is the cause and effect, that every action is going to have a result to it. It's the same thing as science.
My second question would be about hinting. As a former teacher, we often used hinting to try to get students to remember, come to an answer on their own. Mm-hmm. Is this like a negative aspect? Is this something that should be avoided?
No, this can be helpful to encourage somebody to learn, but the hinting that the Buddha is talking about is like, say we went in to brief the boss on our project, right? We're all on a project team. And I was like, yeah, boss, I worked on this aspect of the project and I got all my work done, but I'm not sure what Jake did. I didn't see him working on very much. Right? I'm kind of hinting around, right? I'm not being very clear and concise. And I could just say, here, boss, this is what I was able to do. I was able to work on this, that, and the other thing. And this is what I was able to deliver, right? I don't need to like hint around about what Jake may or may not have been able to do. That's for Jake to be able to talk about. I can just be clear and concise about what I worked on, and I don't need to be hinting around about other things. So what you were talking about is kind of like spurring someone's memory in order to help them to be able to learn. And that is very beneficial because you're helping that person to arise wisdom in the mind.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other questions. Let me just check online here. I see all of you guys on Facebook and YouTube. Welcome to all of you guys. All right, so now we're going to move into the the mental discipline section. We just finished up the moral conduct section. Now we're going to move into right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is where you're going to see the teachings of the Buddha really expand and give you more details on what it takes to actually implement the moral conduct. You wouldn't be able to implement that moral conduct that we just talked about without the mental discipline. And vice versa, that your mental discipline is not going to be very strong if your moral conduct is not very strong. So all of these sections, all of these steps are actually working together. You're not mastering one before you move on to the next. The way you might think about this is like 8 individual dials, and you're trying to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. And if you tweak these 8 individual dials, you're going to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. So you would like to tweak all these dials in tandem with each other to produce a better and better sound out of the speakers. So the mind is the same way. When you tweak each one of these 8 dials, you're going to get a better and better performing mind. So it's this mental discipline section that's going to help you bring all of these other things into practice. So the first one is right effort. So I'm going to read this to you, and then I'm going to teach it to you so you can understand it. Here the Buddha says, "In what, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort." So here he's talking about 4 things. And these 4 things, I've detailed them here. He's talking about preventing unwholesome mental states that have not arisen from arising in the mind. He's talking about abandoning or eliminating unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind. He's talking about producing unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind. And he's talking about maintaining wholesome mental states, bringing them to full growth and full perfection of development in the mind. So I'm going to give you some examples here to help you understand. Like right now, you're probably not thinking about killing another human being. This is probably the farthest thing from your mind. And what the Buddha is saying is any kind of unwholesome things that are not currently in your mind, prevent those from ever coming into your mind. You're going to have to apply the effort to prevent those from ever coming into your mind. And this is just one example, but there could be others as well that are not currently in your mind that you would like to apply the effort to prevent from ever coming into the mind. But then there's certain unwholesome qualities that are in your mind right now. And you're going to have to apply the effort to eliminate those out of your mind. Here's some examples. Maybe if you're in an existing relationship and you have a craving for sexual contact outside of your existing relationship, and you know this is going to cause harm and it's unwise to do so. So if you notice that craving coming up in your mind, you're going to have to cut that off, apply right effort, abandon that out of your mind. Or say you have anger or frustration or irritation that's arising up in the mind. This is an unwholesome quality that's coming up in the mind, and you would like to apply the effort to abandon that and cut that off and let it go. Then you would like to produce unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind. There are certain wholesome mental states that you're going to learn about as part of this path, and some of those wholesome mental states are not currently in your mind, and you're going to have to apply the effort to bring those into your mind. For example, generosity. Maybe you find it very hard to share with people, and you don't like to share. You like things to be self-pleasing for yourself. Well, when you understand that generosity is actually going to help you get to enlightenment because it's training your mind to let go and not hold on to things tightly, an enlightened being is not selfish. They're going to share with other people. So you're going to need to bring this generosity into your mind. So if you know that you find it very difficult to share, you're going to have to apply the effort to bring this generosity, this wholesome quality into your mind. Or maybe compassion. The opposite of compassion is like indifference, because compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. Whereas if you see people that are going through certain challenges or difficulties in life, and you're like, I don't care, it's not my life, right? This is indifference. Well, if that's the way that your mind currently thinks, you're going to have to apply the effort to bring this wholesome quality into your mind. Then there's certain wholesome qualities that are currently in your mind. You have certain wholesome qualities, but they haven't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. And you're going to need to apply the effort to do that. Loving kindness is a great example of this. You probably are a loving and kind person, but in certain situations, you're not. You have anger and hatred and ill will towards somebody, right? And that's because your loving kindness hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. You're going to need to apply the effort to do that. The same thing with sympathetic joy. Sympathetic joy is the joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. It's the opposite of envy or jealousy. So maybe in some situations, someone's like, hey, I'm going to go to Thailand. I haven't been to Thailand before. I'm going to go there and check it out. And you're like, I've been to Thailand. You're going to have a great time. Have a good time, right? That's sympathetic joy. Joy for their success, even if you didn't contribute to it. But now maybe you're at work and you're applying for a promotion, and one of your coworkers is applying for a promotion and they get the job instead of you. And they swing by your desk and they're like, hey, by the way, I got that new job. And now you're jealous or you're envious. That's because your because your sympathetic joy hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. You're going to need to apply the effort to do that. So in situations where you have wholesome qualities, but they're not being fully practiced in all situations, all the time, you're going to need to apply the effort to cultivate those in the mind more and more. That's what this fourth one is. So the way that I teach this to my young son is I taught him to kick out the unwholesome and bring in the wholesome. That's what right effort is all about. Applying the effort to abandon, to prevent, to bring in and to support and encourage. So you're preventing unwholesome qualities from coming in. You're abandoning the unwholesome qualities that are currently in your mind. You're bringing in the wholesome qualities that are not currently in your mind. And you're supporting and encouraging and maintaining the wholesome qualities that are currently there. So this is right effort. You wouldn't be able to practice right effort without right mindfulness. I'm going to read this to you because this is the Buddha teaching right mindfulness. He says, "And what, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk resides, reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. This is called right mindfulness." So he's talking about four things here. Body as body, feelings as feelings, mind as mind, mental objects as mental objects. These are referred to as the four foundations of mindfulness. But first, let's just talk about mindfulness in general. What he's talking about here is awareness of mind. You're going to need to have awareness of your thoughts, your ideas, your mental states, what's wholesome and what's unwholesome. If you don't have right mindfulness, how could you ever apply right effort? You're going to need to know what are the wholesome and unwholesome things that are in your mind so you can apply right effort. So when the Buddha is talking about mindfulness, in general, he's talking about awareness of mind. And you're going to need to be aware here that in modern language, people are oftentimes using this word mindful in a way that the Buddha didn't use it. And if they would like to use it that way, it's up to them that they could use it however they would like to use it. But if you're interested in getting to enlightenment in the way that the Buddha taught, you're going to need to know how the Buddha taught it. The way that people are oftentimes using the word mindful is they'll say, "Can you mindfully carry this glass of water to that table?" What they're saying is, can you carefully carry this glass of water to the table? And they're just substituting the word mindful, right? But what the Buddha was talking about is awareness of mind. Be aware of your thoughts and your ideas. That's what he's talking about. He's not talking about being careful, by carefully carrying a glass of water, right? You would like to be aware of what's going on in your mind. But more specifically, he was talking about the four foundations of mindfulness. When you first get started on the path, you might just hang out with this awareness of mind. For a few months, you might just need to practice having more awareness of your thoughts and your ideas and the things that are going on in your mind. But then you would like to develop the four foundations of mindfulness, where you have awareness of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. What we're talking about here is with the bodily sensations, there's an early warning system that you have that's going to alert you that you're about to become discontent. Whether it's a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, or neither painful nor pleasant, there's some bodily sensations that are happening first before your mind experiences the feeling. So in the case of something like anger, you might notice tingling in the body. You might notice tightening in the chest. You might notice tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. This is the bodily sensations associated with anger that is arising. It's an early warning system alerting you, hey, you're about to get angry. And if you're aware of those bodily sensations, you can then apply right effort and prevent that unwholesome quality from coming into your mind by cutting it off and letting it go as a bodily sensation. But you're not going to always be able to catch it there because your mind isn't really well trained yet. You're sometimes going to experience a feeling, because if you miss it as a bodily sensation, now your mind's going to experience the feeling of anger or frustration or agitation. And you can cut it off there too, right? But more and more, you would like to cut it off at the bodily sensations, right? You're not suppressing your feelings here. What you're doing is you're actually cutting it off before it becomes a feeling. Your mind's essentially saying, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling here. And you're like, nope, not going to let you do that, right? You're cutting it off and letting it go. You're rewiring your mind, not allowing it to form its inner feelings based on something external. The way that this might look in day-to-day life is, say you're sitting on the sofa and you're watching the news on TV, and you're noticing through what you're watching on the news that this bodily sensation is coming. You're noticing this tingling in the chest, the tightening in the chest, the tightening in the throat, the heat in the face, the pressure in the skull. Well, just cut off the news and go for a walk. No sense to sit there and dwell in that. Cut it off. Your mind is about to form a conditioned feeling. Don't allow your mind to dwell in that. Cut it off and let it go and move on to something else. You can always come back and take a look at something later. Go for a walk, go for a bike ride, go to the kitchen, get a glass of water. No sense to sit there and let your mind become angry, because once your mind is angry, now you got to get rid of that anger. And this is like you're in a boat and you're going from Indonesia to Australia, and now you've got all this water coming into the boat. And now you got to get this water out of the boat, right? You would like to prevent this water from ever coming into the boat so that you can sail from Indonesia to Australia very easily, right? If you're out in the middle of the ocean and all this water comes flooding in, you got a real problem to deal with. So it's the same thing. Once you allow the anger to come into the mind, you got a real problem to deal with now. So if you can prevent it by cutting it off as a bodily sensation, you'll save yourself a whole lot of trouble. But because your mind isn't well trained right now, it will become a feeling in some situations. You're not going to be able to walk out of here and just instantly implement what I'm teaching you here. So when it becomes a feeling, when you notice that, you got to cut that off and let it go. Don't allow it to come into your speech and your actions where you're being bitter and harsh and hostile, because that's where you're damaging your relationships. You can't have harmonious relationships when you're being bitter and harsh and hostile with other people. So when you notice that feeling coming into your mind, you need to step away from the conversation, train your mind, get rid of that feeling, cut that off, cut that off, cut that off. Don't allow yourself to be bitter and harsh and hostile in that situation. Because if you don't cut it off as a bodily sensation and you don't cut it off as a feeling, now it's going to affect the condition of your mind. Have you ever been agitated or grumpy or irritated for like a few hours or a few days or like a week or two? Of course you have. Right? Every single one of us have. That's because we didn't understand this. We didn't have the wisdom of this. That there was bodily sensations, there was a feeling, then it affected the condition of our mind. We walked around agitated and grumpy and irritable for many days or like a week or two. So if you're noticing that, if you have awareness of that condition of your mind, you can transform that and you can get rid of that. Because if you don't, then you're going to experience these mental objects. What a mental object is a deeply rooted container that's in the mind that, in this example of ill will, it's this ill will. Like right now, you're not angry. You're just sitting here listening to me. But you have this deeply rooted container in the mind. It's a mental object. It's called ill will. If somebody triggers one of your cravings, desires, attachments, your ill will is going to come up. And now your intentions, your speech, and your actions are going to be bitter, harsh, and hostile. So you need to have awareness of these mental objects. All the 10 fetters that the Buddha teaches, these are mental objects. And in other programs, other retreats, I teach you about these mental objects because you're going to need to know what they are. You're going to need to know the symptoms of them. You're going to need to know how to eliminate them. And you're going to need to know how to know that you've actually eliminated them. So there's other programs where I teach you about these mental objects. But for now, just understand that there's these deeply rooted containers in your mind called mental objects. Ill will is one of them. Conceit is one of them, like arrogance and pride, measuring and comparing, judging other people, things like this, putting yourself above people or below people. This is called conceit. So there's different mental objects that are in your mind. When you were born, you didn't have ill will in your mind. right? When you went into the nursery at the hospital, you didn't hate other babies when you were in the nursery. That was something that developed over time, right? Because of your craving, your desire, your attachment, you started developing these mental objects because we didn't know about the 4 foundations of mindfulness. We started craving. We wanted chocolate and ice cream. And when we got it, we got happy. But when we didn't get it, we got angry, we got frustrated. And because of our lack of wisdom, we blamed it on mom and dad. We thought mom and dad were the worst mom and dad ever. You won't give me chocolate and ice cream, right? And now we got this anger in our mind, and we formed this mental object of ill will. But when we were a child, we didn't have that. When we were an infant, we didn't have that. It got formed over time, right? So you're going to need to have awareness of these 4 foundations of mindfulness so that you can now transform the mind, cutting off and letting go at the bodily sensations. Then we've got right concentration. This is the last step on the Eightfold Path. I'm not going to actually read this to you because what the Buddha is describing here is he's describing the results of having put together the entire Eightfold Path. He's talking about what your mind's going to start experiencing. These are referred to as the jhanas. These are preliminary phases that your mind's going to go through on your way to the first stage of enlightenment. There's 4 stages of enlightenment, but prior to the first stage of enlightenment, you're going to be experiencing these enhanced qualities of mind. At some point, you will need to learn these, and I will teach it to you at that point. But at this point, what you need to understand is how to practice right concentration. And that's what I'm going to focus you on, because the Buddha teaches in other parts of his teachings how to practice right concentration. Here, he's talking about the results of having practiced right concentration. So the way that you practice right concentration is you develop a daily meditation practice and you practice singleness of mind in day-to-day life. This is how you train your mind to be focused and concentrated. With your meditation practice, you practice breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. You're going to see after lunch the reason why these 2 meditations are taught. They're addressing 2 of the 3 major problems in your mind. So the breathing mindfulness meditation and the loving kindness meditation is what you're gradually building up in your day-to-day life. And that's what we're going to be doing in this course, is helping you guys to do that. It can take 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to this kind of frequency of 2 to 3 sessions for 30 minutes or more. You would like to gradually build up to this over time. Okay. And keep in mind that the goal of this breathing mindfulness meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. It's to notice your thoughts sooner and sooner and cut them off and let them go easier and easier. But even an enlightened being is going to have thoughts during meditation. But during the unenlightened state, you might have a bombardment of thoughts, or you might indulge in a thought and follow it for a period of time before you realize you're meditating and you bring your mind back to your breath. But what you would like to do is notice it sooner and sooner and cut it off and let it go easier and easier. The breathing mindfulness meditation is helping you to eliminate craving, desire, attachment while cultivating mindfulness and concentration. The loving kindness meditation is helping you to eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will and all the lesser versions, and it's helping you to cultivate that active goodwill, the genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, the goodwill, the loving kindness. And then there's 2 other specialized meditations that you use on an as-needed basis. But everybody's going to need these 2, and you're going to understand why after lunch. Then the other part of practicing right concentration is to practice singleness of mind, where you're doing just one thing at a time. Like if you're washing dishes, you would like to just wash dishes. If you notice that your mind's wandering and thinking about something else, cut that off and let it go and bring your mind back to the dishes. If you're in a business meeting and your mind's wandering, you would like to cut that off and let it go and bring the mind back to the task at hand. Because if you allow your mind to wander, you're not going to be applying effort and energy towards whatever task it is that you're doing. So if you're like talking on your phone to your mom, you're watching TV, and you're eating a sandwich, you're not actually doing all 3 things at one time. Your mind's rapidly cycling from thing to thing to thing to thing. And they call this multitasking. And they think that this is actually making you more productive. But in reality, it's causing you more difficulties because you're not really talking to your mom. You're not really watching the TV, and you're not really digesting your sandwich. you're basically doing each one of these things for about 3 to 5 seconds, and your mind is rapidly cycling from thing to thing to thing to thing. It's kind of like a horse running around a racetrack. If you've ever gone to the barn after the horse race, the horse can't calm down because it's been running around this racetrack, and now it's all hyped up in the barn. So if you get home from work or you get home from going outside and your mind is all hyped up and you're overactive and you're anxious and you're stressed and you just can't calm down, this is because you're running around the track. Your mind is bouncing around from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. Because if you go to work and you do that 8 or 10 hours a day, when you come home, you're going to find it very difficult to relax. So what you would like to do is just do one thing at a time, single threaded. Because if you are really talking to your mom, watching TV, and you're eating a sandwich, this conversation that you are having, it could have been like a 10 or 15 minute conversation, but because of what you were doing, it actually took you 45 minutes or an hour to have this conversation. And how could you bring forth your full practice of things like right speech if you weren't focused and concentrated? You're going to need to bring forth your wisdom of right speech and all these other teachings. But if your mind is muddled and rapidly cycling around and around and around, you're not going to be able to bring forth your full wisdom to practice something like right speech. And now when you get off the phone with mom, you regret what you said because you said something unwise, or maybe you agreed to do something for mom and you totally forget what it was, and you have to call her back up and say, Mom, I'm so sorry. What was that I was supposed to do for you again? Right? Because now your mind is lacking concentration. But if you just do one thing at a time, you can be focused and concentrated. And if you do this enough, your mind will just always be focused and concentrated. You got to train your mind in meditation, but outside of meditation, you need to be practicing singleness of mind. The way that you can think about this is that if you had a piece of wood and you had a steel rod and you were grinding this steel rod back and forth, you're going to be creating a groove in this wood. But initially, there's no groove, so the steel rod's going to be bouncing around quite a bit. But eventually, if you get that steel rod going back and forth in the same spot long enough, you're going to get a deeper and deeper groove. And when it pops out, you're going to know that it's popped out, and you're going to be able to bring it right back. And now you're back in the groove. But eventually, if you get this groove deep enough, your steel rod's never going to bounce out because it's too deep. So the same thing is true, that if you focus and you're concentrated and you do that regularly throughout your day, practicing singleness of mind, you'll be able to stay focused and concentrated at all times during your day. But you're going to need practice and training to be able to do this. So if you're eating and you're also watching a YouTube video, your mind's rapidly cycling back and forth like this. Maybe you feel bored to just sit there and eat by yourself, and you think the way to solve it is to have a YouTube video, but you're not solving it because all you're doing is fulfilling your craving. You have a craving for stimulation, and just sitting there to eat dinner by yourself, you don't feel satisfied. You need some kind of stimulus. So if you can get used to just sitting there and eating and being content and being peaceful and being joyful eating, then you don't need this YouTube video. But if you keep bringing this YouTube video into the mix, your mind's going to just keep rapidly cycling, and you're never going to get rid of that boredom because you can't sit there and just eat dinner by yourself. You need to have some kind of stimulus. So the way that you get rid of that craving, desire, attachment is you eliminate that YouTube video and train your mind to just do one thing at a time. Okay, so this is right concentration, developing a meditation practice and practicing singleness of mind in day-to-day life. Okay, so here's kind of a summary of that you're practicing right effort, which is taking initiative to eliminate unwholesome aspects of the mind and cultivate certain wholesome qualities in the mind. Then you would like to practice right mindfulness, where you develop awareness of the mind, but more specifically, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you're aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. Then you'd like to practice right concentration, where you're practicing meditation regularly on a daily basis, gradually building up to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more, and you're practicing singleness of mind in your day-to-day life. So like right now, when I'm talking, you're practicing singleness of mind. Perhaps, I don't know, you're focused, right? And now when you hear something, you're taking a note and you're focused on taking the note. And then you're focusing on what somebody's saying. You would like to practice singleness of mind. If your mind's wandering towards lunch and thinking about the mango and sticky rice that you're going to eat in a little bit, you cut that off and you let it go. You're like, no, it's not time for mango and sticky rice. I'm going to focus on what it is that I'm learning. And now you get more benefit out of each individual activity that you're doing. And your mind will be more and more focused. Okay, so this is the mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path. So each one of these sections is working together to be able to support each other. By you having more and more mental discipline, your actual moral conduct is going to improve. Then when you have a wholesome moral conduct, that's going to help you to improve your mental discipline. And all of this is built on this wisdom section that we were talking about. So any questions on any aspect of this? You have a question, Jake? Yeah.
I have a question about what I call flow state and how it fits in. This would be like, I've experienced it in two different settings. So I've experienced it playing video games where like I'm not consciously thinking about the video game, but I am performing optimally, I guess. And the same would be for painting, where I'm not making individual choices and like pausing. I'm just painting without really thinking. Mm-hmm. Does this fit in? Is this something that is part of right concentration? Is something that I should seek to get into, seek to avoid?
What I would say is that in those situations, you were making choices. You might have been kind of checked out where you weren't, paying as much attention as you might have done otherwise, but there were certain choices that you were making because otherwise you wouldn't be able to paint or you wouldn't be able to play that video game if you weren't making conscious choices. Your mind might have been checked out to a certain degree, but you were making certain choices. You're not interested in getting to a point where you're not conscious and you're not aware. Getting to enlightenment and getting awake is to have a higher consciousness where you're intentionally making every single decision about your life and every single thing that you're doing, the way you interact with others, the job that you have, the place where you live, the way that the friends and family that you associate with. You would like to be consciously making decisions about every single aspect of your life. And you're not interested in getting to a point where you're unconscious or you're unconsciously making decisions. That's not what you would be interested in doing, because there you can't bring forth your wisdom to make wise decisions that's going to produce wholesome results.
So maybe I'm not describing it properly. It's almost like instead of dwelling on every decision while you're in this kind of flow state, you're making them instantaneously. And so it seems to, the results of being in it are very what's what I'm looking for here? Optimal is, it's not the right word I'm looking for, but the results of it are always very positive as far as the goals.
Yeah, what you might be describing is what we refer to as the jhanas, where the mind is in this heightened state of awareness. And experiencing enhanced qualities of mind. This is possible that you could be kind of touching into some of those and kind of experiencing some of those qualities, but the mind's not firmly in those jhanas. So that's why the mind kind of reverts backwards and kind of regresses backwards. But as the mind's moving to more and more levels of awakening, you'll get to the point where you can easily make decisions about certain things, and you're basing those decisions in wisdom, and it always turns out wonderful for you. Where as you're kind of putting together this path, you have to really think through each individual decision that you're making. But as you kind of upgrade the operating system within your mind, you'll be able to kind of flow with the things much better using your language of flowing, right? Because if you're on like an old archaic operating system, like unenlightened 1.0, it's like, man, it's really hard to get the computer to do the things that you need it to do. But when you upgrade to Enlightenment 9.0 through incremental upgrades, you get to this new operating system. It's a little bit cumbersome for you at first, but once you get up and running on this new operating system, you flow with it. And it's like, wow, this is so much better than that old operating system. But on your way to Enlightenment 9.0, it's a little bit cumbersome, and you need to kind of consciously think through all the steps of as you're making your way to this new operating system. So getting to the point where your mind's fully awake and having full wisdom about this path, you'll get to the point where you can easily make decisions about what's going on in your day-to-day life. Where earlier on the journey, you don't have that ease of making decisions, and you got to really think through your decisions, and it feels somewhat cumbersome. But as you get going more and your mind becomes more awake, it will become very fluid in the way that you make decisions in your day-to-day life.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see if we have any questions online here. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions online. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pause for us to go out and have lunch. You guys can go wherever you like. It's 12:30, and we usually take an hour and a half lunch break each time. But would you guys be okay with an hour and 15 minutes? Is anybody craving an hour and a half? Is anybody frustrated and angry that you're not getting your hour and a half? No? See, there you've independently verified the third universal truth. When you don't have craving, your mind is not discontent, right? You've independently verified it. So if you guys could take an hour and 15 minutes, which means we would get back at 1:45, I'm going to start off with meditation. We'll do meditation first, and then I'm going to teach you the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots, or the 3 fires. So thank you for your questions. Thank you for your interest to learn, and I'll see you guys after lunch. Okay? Have a good lunch. Yeah.